Tonight, this week's issue of Grayson is brought to you by the Ireland Tourism Board. Red Hood gives Harley Quinn a run for her money for the most cringe-inducing humor of the week, and Superman Wonder Woman has a pull from the 90s that you will never see coming. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 174 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and happy New Year's Eve, one and all. Lest old acquaintance be forgot and all that jazz. So I've got a few things I need to cycle through here first. The first and foremost that I need to say is I am running off exactly 2 hours of sleep. I had to wake up for work the day that I record this, which is the day before it goes out. And then I'm going to have to drive 4 hours to go to a New Year's party. So I am kind of in a liminal space between life and death. I'm not sure what's real right now, and I apologize if my thoughts are a little bit scattered because of that. Please do your best to bear with me. Beyond that, it's a fifth week. Oh boy, you know what that means. Well, here's the thing. This is the weirdest fifth week of all time because this fifth week doesn't actually exist. I said this last week. I've said this for the past 3 weeks, if I'm being honest, but I'm going to say it again, goddammit. That is, DC loaded up all the comics that should have come out this week onto last week. And then I unloaded them. I moved them back. So this week, technically, should only have had 3 comics, which were the weekly comics that they couldn't move. And I added an extra 9 onto it. So if you'll forgive me for a second, let me tell you the comics that came out last week, but I'm covering this week. And those are the annual issues of Batman, Catwoman, Grayson, Green Lantern, and Red Hood and the Outlaws. We have the we have the Robin Rises Alpha issue, wrapping up the Robin Rises story arc. And then we have the normal numbered issues of Sinestro, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Harley Quinn. And then also we have all of the weeklies, which are Batman Eternal, Future's End, and Earth 2 World's End. So, what is of note out of that? Like I said, the Robin Rises thing is going on. Sinestro, followed by Green Lantern, are the final 2 parts of the Godhead storyline, so that's going on there. And Batman Annual number 3 is technically a tie-in to the Endgame event going on in Batman. I say technically because it has the label, it definitely is that, but like, is it? No, that seems like an editorial we need to sell this annual sort of thing. Anyway, all that said and done, all that going on there. New Year's, I don't know, what am I supposed to say for New Year's? Make a good resolution. Do not make that resolution to catch up on the New 52. I beg of you. Heed my warning. This is a prophecy. You will see nothing but pain and torture and having to do this show on 2 hours of sleep because it needs to go out the next. Don't do it. Don't do it. Sorry, like I said, 2 hours of sleep. I'm a little bit scatterbrained. Anyway, I think that's pretty much all I need to say. Usually on fifth weeks, I do backup stories, but there was only one backup story, which was Batman Endgame stuff. It's stuff that's related to Joker. And honestly, I don't want to do it this week. It's a holiday, and there's only 3 parts of it where there's going to be like 6 total. So I'm just going to save that for the next fifth week coming up, which is going to be right before Convergence, which is just the best time to do it. So yeah, all that's going to be then. Enjoy that, and welcome to the show. Sinestro number 8, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Martin Coccolo. This is the next part of the Godhead storyline. In fact, it's actually the final part if you don't count the grand finale over in the Green Lantern Annual. So, last time we dealt with Sinestro, he he's just kind of off doing his own thing. He's sneaking around New Genesis, and he's got his own little machinations, and he's still doing so, going down an alley. He sees some new gods flying around. He's just looking around at New Genesis. He tells this ring, okay, hey, find me some life around here that's not like part of a bigger group so that I can get the drop on him. And the ring says, well, here's a New Genesis. It's a new god. Also, a corrupted Yellow Lantern is with him, and they are under the control of the New Genesis people. And it's like, oh, cool. And this corrupted member, are they invulnerable like the other new gods? And the ring's like, nope. And it's like, awesome. So the Yellow Lantern member's name is Devil Dog. He just immediately gets incinerated by Sinestro, who is in his full Parallax outfit. And he goes up to the new god, who I don't even think gets a name. He's just like, you made me kill one of my guys. I mean, it's not the biggest loss, like, whatever. But I'm here to show you that even gods can fear. And the new god, like, charges in, sword blazing, and Sinestro just wraps him up in a construct, just being like, oh, bro, no, you got it all wrong here. I'm not the bad guy, for once. Like, I'm actually doing, like, you guys brought me here, and I'm just getting my just desserts. So, and he goes, like, full, like, biblical. He's like, oh, I am the righteous punishment amongst you new gods. I am the fire. I am the cataclysm. But I do show mercy. And he pulls out the new god's mother box, and he's like, show me how to use this thing, and let me have yours. And he's like, nope, no can do. It is imprinted to each of the new gods, and I would never betray my people by allowing you to do whatever with it. And Sinestro's like, you know, I got a literal fear demon inside of me. You want to see what that's like? And he lets Parallax out long enough for Parallax to just feed on this new god, just straight up murders him. And Sinestro's talking to his ring, just like, hey, tell me what's up with the mother box. And the ring tells him, oh, there's like a central unit. This is just kind of a satellite thing. It's like a nervous system sort of thing. And it's just like, okay, all right, I get it. Cool. That's something we could work with. So the he gets ready to go. He tells Parallax to come back into him. And Parallax, like, doesn't for a second. And he's like, oh, don't start with this. You know who the boss here is. So Parallax goes back into his body. And we see him hovering over top of the New Genesis armies, which are starting to be built up and getting all ready to invade Earth. And he's like, ah, man, this looks so cool. Like, we could have been buddies if they just didn't try to get the drop on me and insult the Corps. So as he's saying this, all of a sudden, well, first off, he talks to Despotellis, the little virus one, saying like, hey, converge on my signal, I need something from you. But then all of a sudden, Star Sapphire Ring goes flying by. And that was over in the last issue where Star Sapphire Ring just got free. And he follows it over to Carol Ferris, who is also with Guy Gardner, John Stewart, Kyle Rayner, Simon Baz, the whole shebang. So she's like, oh, good, Sinestro really wasn't looking to deal with this. And like, everyone just hates that Sinestro's here. And he's like, you idiots, I am crucial to the plan that's going to save all of our asses, and you can't do anything about it. And John Stewart's just like, all right, whatever. You, Kyle, Carol, you keep saying Walker's safe. We're going to go get his ring back. Sinestro, and he's like, no, you don't get to command me. I got my own thing going on. I'm out of here. So he just flies off, and John's just like, all right, whatever. So at this point, we go over to the new gods, and Metron's like, all right, all of our plans are ready. Everything's cool. Battle for Earth should take like 3-4 days tops. And in comes Becca, who says, hey, Metron, I think you might have messed up your calculations. You didn't take into account how strong they're going to fight, like how the passion they have. And Metron's like, that's not really a factor. And she's like, okay, look, just hear me out here. They managed to break into the whatever his name is, Hylt, his workshop, and steal their rings back. Like, that's a big deal. And also, this was the planet that fought back against Darkseid. Like, we shouldn't underestimate them. And Metron's like, you know, we already had one traitor here today. I wouldn't be surprised if there was another. And she's like, hold on, I'm not. Hey, hi, Father, I'm not. And he's like, whatever, I don't care. You don't have to worry about it. Like, Darkseid's going to come to Earth. We're going to take Earth. That's how it's going to play out. And in walks Sinestro. He's like, you idiots have no idea how hard Earth is to take. And Becca's about to, like, attack. She's like, oh, I know this one. He's an ass. And Highfather just waves him off. Just be like, hold on. No, let's see what this guy wants. And Sinestro comes in being like, look, you are going to be defeated and you will have a failure a failure as your legacy, and it will haunt you for the rest of your days. And Highfather just starts laughing. He's just like, oh my god, that's hilarious. I didn't realize that the negotiator that these Lancers are going to send was going to be the court jester. And Sinestro takes that personally. He launches a construct of Darkseid, and he's like, you know, the Guardians kept a file on Darkseid. They kept files on all of the threats to the universe. You don't have one. The only mention of you in any of the files is as a footnote to Darkseid's actual threat, because even the Guardians realize that your ego and your arrogance is going to be your downfall. So Highfather gets pissed. He attacks Sinestro, starts beating him up, just being like, you have no idea. I have the life equation right now. I could separate the soul from your body, but you know what? I'm not going to have you tainting my army. So he knocks back Sinestro. And it looks like, you know, it did some damage. So Sinestro's like, hey, Despotellis, man, you got it? Did you do it? And he's like, yeah, I'm here. I did it. But I can't, like, infect them. You know, they're immune to disease. And Sinestro directs him over to the mother box. So as Sinestro is getting a beatdown from Highfather, Despotello says, hey, it's done. I've reprogrammed the coordinates. And he's like, all right, can you get out of there now, Despotello? And he's like, no, I can't. They have fail-safes in place. I'm going to stay here and sacrifice myself. And Sinestro looks up to Highfather towering over him and be like, yep, we all are doing our sacrifices today. And then as Highfather's going for the swing, he just bails. Sinestro's just like, nope, you will not kill me today. And we see a boom tube opens up, the boom tube that's taking all the armies to Earth, and Sinestro flies into it first. And they're like, oh, let us go, let us give chase. And Highfather's like, nah, we're literally sending a whole army there. It's no big deal. So, yeah, the army's on its way to Earth. Question mark? Because of, obviously, the coordinates have been replaced with new ones. So this leads into the finale, which is Green Lantern Annual. As for this particular issue, it's good. It's a good issue. I think I like this one a little bit more because it is actually Sinestro doing things. Like, it's clear that he does have his own machinations, and it does feel like it is kind of his own thing, but obviously this ties into the larger plot as a whole, a lot tighter than any of the other ones really have. So I'm down with it. I enjoy where this one managed to go with it. Art-wise, it looks great as well. Martin Coccolo does a great job with Sinestro. Yeah, I'm going to say this is a good 7.5. This is nicely written, nicely wrapped up. They do a good job with the parallax stuff as well. So yeah, 7.5. Green Lantern Annual number 3, written by Robert Venditti, art by Billy Tan. This is the conclusion / finale of Godhead. So previously in Green Lantern, Black Hand and Green Lantern are fighting Orion at the Source Wall, and Black Hand is really interested in the wall itself. And then also a bunch of crazy stuff's going on in New Genesis over in all the other books. But here at the Source Wall, we see that Orion's just like, seriously, dude, your partner, he's like just talking to a wall, we're going to kick your ass. And he's like, oh, you think that, but the real fight hasn't even started yet. Hey, Blackhand, can I get you to focus up, please? Please, like over here with me? And Blackhand's just staring at the wall, and he's like, oh my god, all these dead things. This is great. And Orion's like, I like this guy. I want to have a drink with this guy. And Blackhand reaches out and touches the Source Wall, which is obviously a big no-no. However, it doesn't absorb him. And Green Lantern's like, dude, what are you doing? And he starts doing the whole Blackest Night chant, and he's like, oh, darkness grows, all light dies, blah, blah, blah. And Orion's like, that's not allowed. He shouldn't be able to do that. That's not something that happens. And all of a sudden, as he is saying this, you get a 4-page, like, full fold-out spread here of all of the dead, massive titans that were in the Source Wall come back out as Black Lantern zombies, including, specifically, Relic from, like, 3 arcs ago. So immediately, Green Lantern's like, okay, hey, Black Hand, are you able to control those things? And he's like, yep, they will destroy only what I tell them to. And he's like, great, awesome, sick them on the new gods. So immediately, Orion and his guards scramble. They're like, the wall woke up. What the? All right, fight for your lives, we're fight until we all die. And we see them get surrounded by all these Dark Titans, and Green Lantern's like, hey, look, like, you're never going to be able to beat us. And he's like, yeah, but like, you can't get to New Genesis, and we're not going to open up a boom tube, so yeah. And then all of a sudden, the boom tube opens up right next to Hal, and he's like, oh, you were saying? And we get a brief little glimpse over on New Genesis, which is covering what happened at Sinestro, where the armies were about to march on Earth, but Sinestro at the last minute reprogrammed where the coordinates were sending to direct right next to the source wall. So out of the boom tube comes Sinestro going, hey man, plan's still good? And Green Lantern, or Hal's just like, hell yeah, let's go. So they take the boom tube back through to New Genesis, and it's like, we got 2 things coming through. Wait, scratch that. 24 things coming through. And out through the portal, attacking the New Genesis army, is an entire horde of Black Lanterns. And Highfather's watching on this. He's like, wait a minute, I reckon those things, those are from the source wall. How in the hell is this possible? So they start attacking. Black Hand's just having the time of his life. He's just like, oh my god, I'm so glad you talked me into this, Hal. This is like the greatest thing ever. So the new gods are doing what they can to stay on. Orion's charging them up, being like, our home has been invaded. Fight until the last breath. We cut over to the rest of all of the Lanterns, your Saint Walker, Guy, John, Simon, all of them here. And they're just like, okay, so this is crazy and chaotic. Like, this is horrible. And Guy points out, like, no, man, this is a diversion. This is what we need to launch our jailbreak. Let's go get the other Green Lanterns out. So Simon, John, and Guy go do that. Guy hands over the Blue Lantern ring over to Saint Walker. He picked it up over at his book. And at that point, the other Guardians are there because Kyle Rayner is still depowered. And he's like, I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do? And the Guardians turn to him just being like, hey, man, look, it's all a mental thing. You didn't actually lose the White Lantern powers. Nobody can take that away from you. It's still inside you. So we see the Titans all attacking, doing what they are going to do. And then all of a sudden, one of them, who's like a giant rock monster, goes to smush some new gods, and he stops. And he starts gurgling out this language. And we see all the other Titans are doing the same thing as Black Hand starts to lose control. And he looks down in his own hands, and they start turning to stone, the same way that the stone wall looks. And Hal's like, hey man, you good? And he's like, oh god, they're turning alive. And he's like, Hal's like, I'm sorry, you're saying they're resurrecting? And he's like, oh, you did this on purpose. I'll never forgive you. Black Hand once again rue the day, blah, blah, blah. So he goes back through Boom Tube out to the source wall. Over at the source wall, it turns out Relic, who's just been sitting there just being like, huh, I'm alive again. Guess I'll keep investigating the source wall. So Black Hand goes back to Earth. The Titans are now fully alive of their own free will. And Highfather's like, all right, that's the best you can do. We could take these things out. So he starts launching an attack on these Titans. Kyle's still talking to the Guardians. Kyle's like, I'm sorry, you're saying that what was all that mumbo jumbo with Highfather taking it away from me if I'm still have the White Lantern inside me? He's like, oh, that was just, it's a mental block. Like, he is channeling the White Lantern energy in his scepter through you, and then just kind of made you unaware of it. So all we got to do is just make you re-aware of it. But here's the thing. Here's the reason that, like, we didn't want to do this. If you have the power inside you, which you do, and you always will, you are going to die. It is going to eat you alive. Humans are not meant to have that amount of power. And Kyle gets a little bit upset about that. And Carol comes over and comforts him. And he's just like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of people messing with my head. Screw that. I'm going to be the one that messes around now. So as Highfather's attacking the Titans, him and Carol share a little tender moment. And he's like, look, this is my burden to bear. I got to do this. And if I die, then at least I die trying. So he goes inside of his own mental thing, finds the connection with Highfather. Highfather's like, oh, are you trying to mess around inside my brain now? And Kyle's like, yeah, I found a back door. I'm going to slam it shut. But then Highfather launches an attack inside the brain that is also attacking the Titans, and they all start freaking out because of it. Meanwhile, the Green Lanterns are freeing all the trapped Green Lanterns from the cells, so now it's a full-on battlefield. Metron is telling Highfather, hey man, maybe you should back down a little bit, and he's like, nope. So he keeps on attacking Kyle while also attacking the Titans. Turns out, though, the Titans, they were kind of just neutral after not being controlled by Black Hand, but now that they've been attacked by Highfather, they're pissed, and they start destroying all of New Genesis. Hal calls out, just being like, dude, look around at the destruction, at the chaos. You are willing to sacrifice your own people. You're willing to take away free will. You are Darkseid. You have become him. You are evil now. And that shakes Highfather a little bit as he looks out at all the chaos here. Kyle also kind of like passes out for a while. And so Highfather in the mental state's just like, okay, I may have gone a bit too far here. Kyle, if you're there, prove that you are the true wielder of the life equation. So Kyle wakes up, the link is broken, and we see that New Genesis is literally falling out of the sky. So, first things first, got to deal with the Titans. Kyle wakes up, becomes the White Lantern. He's like, all right, I'm going to go do something crazy with this power. And he gets out into the center of the battlefield and then just focuses on the Titans, and they all just fade away. They all just disappear. And Kyle will say where that happens later. But Saint Walker's watching all this, and he's like, oh my God, the power of life endures. I'm so full of hope now. So, meanwhile, New Genesis is still literally falling out of the sky. The anti-gravity's turned off. There's nothing they can do. Highfather just shouts out, evacuate the city. He breaks his scepter, saying that. Hal's like talking to Sinestro. He's like, we got to do something. We got to help. And Sinestro's like, nah, man. Look, if we don't kill them all now, they're going to get revenge on us down the road. We got to end this now. You can't do the right thing, quote unquote. And Hal's like, screw that. I got to go do something. And Sinestro's like, okay, have fun with that. Hey, Yellow Lanterns, we outie. So they go through a boom tube. They're done. Kyle, he's kind of out for the count after doing that magic light show thing. So Hal goes underneath the New Genesis ship as it's about to crash down onto Old Genesis. And Saint Walker's like, maybe things aren't so bad. And he puts back on the ring and he says, as long as there's being like Kyle in the universe, all will be well. And he becomes Blue Lantern again, thus powering up Hal as he's trying to hold up this entire city. He gets a 300% willpower boost, and he makes a giant kaiju-sized version of himself to hold it up. And he gently sets it down on the ground, and everyone managed to live. So at that point, the Lanterns regroup. It's Kyle, Carol, John, and Hal, and they get surrounded by new gods. And Orion's just like, we never had our fight. Let's go. Let's do this now. And he's like, we just saved your entire freaking civilization, man. And that's when Highfather comes in being like, no, we're done. Look, I may have overstepped my bounds as God. Like, it's a whole thing. Kyle, I misjudged you. I apologize for that. And I still think your Earth is going to be the final battleground, but whenever it happens, that's when we'll show up. We're not going to do this prep work stuff, okay? So, I hope that you take my sincere apologies and know that I regret all of this. And so the Green Lantern starts flying through boob tubes, and Hal's like, hey, we could help you fix up like this whole planet thing. Like, do you want us to help out with that? We got an architect here. And Highfather's like, nah, I have lost a lot of trust with my people, and that is something that I alone need to repair. So get out of here. And as they're flying away, Guy's like, how come there's only like one girl in all the new gods? That's weird, right? And Hal's like, good to have you back, buddy. So as Hal and Kyle are flying away, Kyle's like, hey, man, about me and Carol. And he's like, dude, don't even worry about it. Treat her well. You guys are going to be cool. And he's like, oh, thanks, man. Super awesome. You should probably talk to her at some point. And he's like, yeah, that's a later thing, though. The Guardians say something cryptic about like, oh, they have no idea what has happened because of all of this crazy ass stuff. And hush hush, they'll get around to it later. So Hal says bye to Kyle, says, stay in touch. They go through the boom tubes. They end back up on Mogo. Saint Walker has Mogo's ring. He gives it to a squirrel. The squirrel puts it back onto one of Mogo's tree branches. And Mogo's like, oh boy, yeah, that feels good. Thanks for getting my ring back. And Hal's like, y'all good, man? He's like, yep, you and me both. We're doing great. And then we get the final page of here's why you need to keep on buying this book. We go back to the source wall, specifically that blank part now, because all of the things that emerged from it. And it starts getting this weird veiny energy thing coming out of it. And then all of a sudden, a giant arm extrudes from the wall and breaks out. Oh, God. So that's Godhead. I mean, that's the ending part of Godhead, but that's the gist of it. All right, so talking about the event as a whole, I do have some problems with the fact that a lot of the tie-in stuff did not matter. And not to say that, like, it wasn't important to the story in some extent, but, like, it could have been done in, like, a quarter of the time. The fact that this was stretched out to, what are we looking at here? 4 books? Is it 4 books? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think it's 4 books. And then, oh no, it's 5 because of Sinestro. So, I don't know. It's like 15 books that this got stretched over. It's too much. It's a bit too much for all of this. I don't think it needed to take that long at all. So, it's a bit overstaying its welcome, but it's not a bad final issue. This book does not bear the brunt of all of that. I would say, in general, this probably would get a 7? 7.5. I'll go 7.5 with it. It's just, I don't know. I'm really trying to separate it from bearing the brunt of the entire event, and it's just, like, hard to do. I like the fact that St. Walker's back, Mogo's back. We set up this whole thing of, like, oh, you know, even gods can make mistakes. Cool on that. But, I don't know. It's just, it's a lot of issues for, like, probably what could have all been self-contained in just the Green Lantern book if they didn't want to tie in, like, the Kyle stuff, you know? But no, it's all right. It's a 7.5, and we'll see what happens next in the Venditti part of the Green Lantern saga. Robin Rises Alpha #1. This is written by Peter Tomasi, art by Andy Kubert, and is the conclusion of the Robin Rises story arc. I don't think it's technically a crossover or an event, but it had an Omega and an Alpha issue. So, last issue of Batman and Robin ended with Damian being brought back to life, but then the final page showed Batman, after his armor yelled that he was definitely going to die, collapsing over and seemingly dying. This issue just kind of redoes the last few pages. It's redrawn entirely, but it's Batman, like, grabbing the sarcophagus on Apocalypse. We get a few things of Alfred, who's, like, seeing that apparently they've been gone for 62 hours, and he's like, oh, Batwing and Batwoman have done a great job of protecting Gotham in the meantime. He talks to Batcow and Titus and Alfred the Cat, and then eventually he hears that there's an energy anomaly, so he goes to the armory, picks up a big-ass gun, and as the boom tube opens up, he's ready to fire whatever comes out, but it's the Bat family. And then we just get, like, panel by panel the exact same stuff that happened prior, but we do get little interjections from the background team. They're saying, hey, Cyborg, you gotta close the boom tube, man. The portal's still open. And Cyborg's like, I got a virus in me, bro. I need to reboot real quick now that we're back in the real world. As soon as I'm done rebooting, I can shut down the portal. Meanwhile, Bruce still doing all the stuff of, like, oh, here's the crystal. Don't make me choose the Omega Sanction. And he stabs it into the sarcophagus, bringing back Damian. And Damian, you know, 100% good. He's just like, oh my God, is this real life? And he's like, it is, son. I'm so happy to. And then he just falls over. And then you think this would be a thing. Alfred comes up, checks his pulse, and says, he's fine. And then he just, like, gets back up, like, 3 panels later. So, the portal's still open. The computer's saying that something's coming through, so the rest of the team's like, Cyborg, really want to shut that down? He's like, still rebooting. Update 45 of 63. So, at that point, Damian reaches into the Bat utility belt, pulls out a Batarang, ready to do something, but it snaps in his hand, and he's like, that's weird. So Batman's back up. Everyone gets some more guns, more like energy things out of the armory. They're ready to fire on whatever comes out. And they're just like, hey, Damian, good to have you back. And he's like, yeah, we're going to have to fight against a hell demon, but whatever. And out through the portal comes Calabac. And he's like, you took away my machine that I built myself. How dare you? I will have my revenge. And they all start firing at him. And he just deflects it, blasts them all back. He looks down at Batman and he's like, hey, I recognize you. You were in a bigger suit a few minutes ago. And Batman's like, yeah. And then he hits him with another one of the guns. Damian tries to jump in to help, and Calabac just blasts both of them away. Batman goes unconscious as he hits some water in the Batcave, whereas Damian hits the rock wall, and there is a scrunch noise. So Alfred's a little bit upset that, like, oh, he's dead again. Great. So Cyborg starts managing to pull himself together as the rest of the Bat family tries to hold him off. Damian pulls Batman up out of the water, and he's like, I don't know how I did that. And then all of a sudden he moves at super speed. We see Calabac has managed to take out the rest of the Bat family, and he's like, oh, I will hang your puny heads on my wall. And Damian just comes in and sucker punches him in the face, telling him to stay away from his friends. And so as Calabac's down on the ground, Damian just starts throwing punches, and he's like, all right, well, that's enough of that. And Calabac throws Damian into a Batmobile, and he's like, all right, I've killed your puny child, as then Damian picks up the Batmobile and slams it onto Calabac and starts bashing him around with it. Calabac eventually grabs it himself, hits Damian across the Batcave into the giant penny, and at that point, Batman's like, okay, this is crazy. He's still, like, barely conscious on the ground. Cyborg gets some comms open trying to wake up Batman. As Calabac is going for Damian, all of the pets then intervene. Titus bites Calabac's cheek. I think Alfred the cat does something, but then Calabac slips on a cow pie from Bat Cow. And he's threatening revenge on Bat Cow as Damian picks up the giant penny, throws it into Calabac, and manages to get him to, like, roll away from the rest of the pets. So Calabac starts throwing energy beams at Damian. It's, you know, pinning him to the ground. He's just yelling out how it hurts. And Cyborg's like, hey, I can close the boom tube. I'm doing it in 10 seconds. And Batman's like, all right, cool. And he's like, he preps whatever he's going to do. And we see, as the boom tube is about to close, Calabac turns and sees the Bat Jet being piloted by Batman, hits him in the stomach, blasts him through the boom tube, and it closes at the last second. So Damian picks up Calabac's giant, like, scythe thing that he left behind, and he's like, hey guys, I think something's different about me. And everyone's like, yeah, we noticed, man. But they're all happy that he's okay. He pets his pets, and he thanks Alfred for taking care of them. And Alfred's like, oh, come here. Let me say hello to you properly. And he gives him a hug. Batman goes over to Cyborg, and Cyborg's like, hey, I'll talk to the Justice League about everything that happened. Don't worry about it. And he's like, no. I think I'm going to want to do an in-person thing here. All of the Bat family, since they were wearing the Robin costumes, they take off the Robin emblems, hand it over to Damian, saying, like, you're the one and only Robin, kid. And he's like, yeah, you know it. So they all go upstairs ready to celebrate Damian's new birthday, as Batman's like, yeah, we're going to need to talk about the power thing. So cut over to Nanda Parbat. Group of, I don't know, natives, whatever they are camping out, when all of a sudden a woman approaches saying how hungry she is. She kills the men, and as one of them is dying on the ground, says, who are you? She goes, I don't know. It's Talia. It's absolutely Talia. So we cut to Wayne Manor, and we showed the two graves that Talia and Damian were buried in. Damian's headstone's completely destroyed now, and they're talking about the fact of, like, yeah, we got to run some more tests on you tomorrow. Don't worry about it. And he's like, I feel fine, though. Why do we got to, like, make this a whole thing? And he's like, you're a 10-year-old with superpowers. That's always going to be concerning. So at that point, he comments, hey, why did you destroy my headstone? Like, that seems a little disrespectful, no? And Bruce is like, no, I did it because that was the moment that I knew I was going to bring you back. I was not going to allow you to stay dead, and therefore your memorial of your death has no place here anymore. And he's like, cool. I noticed you didn't do the same for my mom. And he's like, yeah, well, I went after you, not her. Let's not talk about that part. So we see Titus comes in. He wants to play. Damian grabs a baseball and just chucks it, and it goes through all of the trees, not like into the woods, like through the trunks of the trees. And Damian's like, okay, Titus, maybe we'll play later. And all of a sudden, father and son look at each other as Alfred says, can't we have just one normal night, as the bat signal is up in the sky, and we see them back out on patrol. Status quo restored. So, yeah, Damien's got powers. Here's the thing. This book, this event, whatever you want to call it, the fact that there was an Alpha and Omega issue and all that, I get wanting to put some pomp and circumstance on it. I understand entirely. Did not need it. 100% did not need to have all this stuff going on here. It wasn't bad by any means. It's just another story arc, though. Like, it didn't cross over with anything. It didn't impact any other books. It's just this. And then you get to, like, extra size specials on the side. And then this one felt especially weird because it recapped and redrew like 7 to 8 pages of the previous issue, making that last issue feel like, okay, well, like, why are we doing so much overlap here? And the reason is that we want to sell this resurrection of Damien to as many people as possible, but still, the ending is the weirdest part for me here. I don't know how to take it. It feels very limp. It feels very weak. So I'm going to say that this particular issue, it's probably only like a 6.5 for me. It doesn't really do anything that incredible. I mean, sure, now he has superpowers, but like, you could have just said that in the next issue of Batman and Robin. You didn't have to make it a whole thing. So yeah, 6.5. Not awful. The art's still good. I like the voices, but like, in concept, this issue does not need to exist. Batman Annual Number 3, written by James Tynion IV, art by Roge Antonio, I believe it is. Yes. So this is an endgame quote-unquote tie-in, which is to say that it says it is an endgame tie-in, but this has nothing to do with endgame, barring about being about the Joker. So we open up at Arkham Manor, and we meet a man named Thomas Blackcrow, and he's in a cell, and he's like, oh, I just got to be here. I can't let trouble find me. I'm just going to stay here. It's all going to be fine. And a nurse comes up and says, hey, are you in there? And he's like, scours off to the corner. He's like, I see you there. You have a visitor. It's a friend. And he's like, oh, no, I don't have any friends. I don't got no friends. And she's like, oh, what are you talking about? Everybody has a friend. So we cut to 5 years ago. Joker gets on TV and he does a whole big act and he's like, oh, hello, Gotham. It is I, the Joker. You remember me? It's, we've got so many explosions and stuff. And he's just doing his general big threatening routine thing. And as he's doing this, we see that his plan is that they are going to kidnap people and put them into like animal cages, like a zoo sort of thing. It's a whole shebang, but he's got a guy in a gorilla suit he hits with Joker toxin, and he's like, ho, me and my circus will find you. And then we see it freeze frame, and we go to Thomas. We go to Blackcrow, and he's talking to a bunch of like people. He works at a newspaper office or something like that, and he's like, what's so scary about this guy? Well, it's a clown. Like, is this a joke? He literally calls himself the Joker. What is so scary about this guy? And mind you, this is 5 years ago. This is just after 0 Year happened. And they're all like, hey, look, you were off covering wars and stuff like that. You didn't know how bad it got in Gotham. And he's like, I don't care. Dude, I was covering wars. Like, there was a general who, like, sacrificed 500,000 of his own people. Like, that was scary. This guy, he's a clown. Why is everyone so afraid of this guy? And everyone's just like, dude, seriously, don't push this. But one of them, he seems to be dedicated to the idea that he wants to write a story about the Joker, and he wants to provide it a different angle than anyone else ever has. So as he's walking out, he talks to this one guy, Warren, who apparently he's friends with, but Warren's just like, you're being an idiot and you're going to get yourself killed. Don't do this. But regardless, he goes down to Gotham, and he got a tip as to where Joker's hideout is. It's Granny's Gags and Gifts, and he's like, really? I needed a tip to be able to find that. And he manages to sneak his way in. And as he gets inside, he sees Joker, Harley, and 3 different goons there. And the goons are basically just running over the logistics of how are we going to get this whole thing with animals and zoo cages and all that other stuff happening here. So Harley tells a joke about how they put bombs in a microwave at an Italian restaurant they went to, and Joker just starts laughing about that. And Thomas watching this is just like, on TV, he put on like this big bravado. He put on this act, but seeing him here in his private moment, like his eyes are dead. Like there's nothing there. It's something different. And one of the goons, he's looking over all like the numbers and stuff. He's like, it can't work. We can't do it. We're gonna know how many trucks we're gonna need to get all the animals out of the zoo on top of like cages for them. It's too much. We cannot do it. And the other goons are like, hey man, maybe stop saying that stuff. And so Joker comes up being like, what's the problem here? And he's like, look, this is a dumb plan. What's the point of all this? I happen to know that there's a vault I can break into at this bank. It's got $65 million in it. Let's do that instead. And Joker's like, what would I do with $65 million? You don't get the joke. Look, the joke is, screw you. I don't explain my jokes. And then he just hits this guy in the face with acid from his flower, and his face just starts melting off. So Joker goes over to another goon being like, hey, we're friends, right? And he's like, yeah, totally, absolutely. I've been here for 2 months, but of course. And he's like, of course. Take care of this guy and get me another goon. And he's like, can do. So at that point, Thomas realizes, oh, I know what my story's going to be. And he's so enraptured by this idea that he can't help but let out a little chuckle. And Joker hears this and sends Harley. Harley drags him out. And he's like, what were you laughing at? What was so funny? And he's like, you're so funny. Like, you have these people, but like you hate them. You see them as barely human. I bet you've never had a friend in your entire life. And he's like, yeah, I guess that is pretty funny. You know what else is funny? And Harley pulls out a bazooka and is ready to shoot this guy. But in comes Batman and Robin. They save the day, and Batman is, Robin gets him out of there as Batman and Joker fight, and Batman manages to capture Joker, puts him in Arkham. So 1 year passes, and we see that he did publish a story called The Loneliest Clown, and Warren is now telling him, like, hey man, you published this story, Joker broke out of Arkham, and this story was found in his cell tucked under his bed. He has not forgotten you. You should not have done that. And he's like, plenty of journalists have written stories about Joker. He's like, no one's ever said it to their face. So Warren's just out. He's not dealing with this. Thomas is upset that Warren's not sticking by him. So as Thomas gets home, turns out he's staying with an old buddy that he knew back from his war days. And as he gets back into his apartment, he smells something. And he calls out for his friend Danny. And Danny is on meat hooks. He is being puppeted around by the Joker. And he's like, oh, this took me ages. And we see Danny is dead as he's being puppeted by Joker. And Thomas is freaking out. He's just like, oh my God, why? What are you doing here? And Joker's like, you're right. I've never had a real friend before. I was thinking about that all that time. And I think I want you to be my friend. And he's like, so why'd you have to kill my roommate here? And he's like, oh, well, I couldn't have any competition for best friend, could I? And so he puts some ropes around Thomas's arms and gets like right up in his face. And he's like, I did research into you. I know everything about you, all your secrets, your dad with the car, that young girl you had a rendezvous with in Bolivia, the special powder you used to get revved up. We're going to be a special kind of friendship. And as Thomas starts breaking down in tears, Joker's like, is this the part where we hug? And he reaches around, gives Thomas a hug and says, well, I got to head out. I got some plans. See you around, best buddy. And he goes out. So as the cops come sometime later, they see Danny's tied up. Batman's there. He's like, hey, I put Joker away. I'm sorry he did all this stuff to you, but yeah, that's messed up. But Thomas is not taking any chances now. He goes full witness protection, changes his identity, bails out, completely changes everything. So 6 months pass, and he's built a new identity for himself. But the Joker escapes once again, and Tommy's freaking out. He's calling up Warren. He's like, oh, I had this dream last night. I had the dream. I saw Danny. He was strung up again. And he's just like, hey, look, I'm coming over. We'll have some drinks. And he's like, no, I'm fine. I locked up all the doors. I'm safe. I'm absolutely safe. And as he walks around his house, he notices an open window. He goes, he closes it. He runs to the kitchen to get a knife. He's just looking around, trying to find the Joker. The window opens again. He closes it again. He just yells out, show yourself. And eventually he collapses down in the hallway holding his knife. And he's just like, there's no way. I'm up on like one of the top floors of my apartment building. He didn't climb up. It's all in my head. I'm all alone. And he manages to fall asleep while holding the knife. And when he wakes up, he looks down the hallway, and written in blood on the floor is, miss you, with a big heart. 1 year passes. He gets married. He had a girlfriend earlier on in that story. He gets married, and we see that there is this girl just breaking down in tears as he's walking home on the sidewalk, and he asks like, "Hey, what's her problem?" to a nearby passerby. And he's just like, "Oh, one of her coworkers was killed in the recent Joker attack because he got out." And Thomas immediately like, "He got out?" So at that point, he calls for his wife, says, "Molly, hey, let's go to the cabin, like right now. Get in the car. I'll meet you there." And as he makes his way back home, he keeps on picturing Danny, hoping that's not going to be a thing. He stops the car at his house, busts in, and inside is his wife in her wedding dress watching their anniversary tapes as Joker is like dancing with her. And he's like, "Let her go, you monster. You thing is with me." And he's just like, "Oh, yes, of course, best friend. I would never do anything to hurt her." So he lets her fall to the floor, and we see Joker's like, "Now, I don't know why you didn't invite me to be the best man, but I was thinking we could throw ourselves a little bachelor party here. I brought along some images I think you're really going to like." And he's just like, Tommy's just like, "Please, just kill me. Just do it. You made your point. I shouldn't have done that. Just kill me." He's like, "Kill you? What are you talking? I enjoy our talks. Let's keep doing this forever." So he pulls up a slideshow on a projector reel he had set up of all of his victims, like super extreme close-ups of their Joker smile faces. And he says the story of like, "Oh, I remember how she looked at me and she laughed as she knew she was about to die. It's not the way you look at me though, Tom. Nobody ever looked at me like a friend before." So months ago, sometime after that, he's calling into Gotham City Police Department constantly, every day, checking that the Joker's face is still there, that he hasn't come back. And whoever's picking up the phone is like, "It's still here. I see it. There's no way he could survive without a face. He's gone. You don't have to worry about this anymore." And Tommy's like, "I don't think I hear scratching in my walls. It's not okay." And we see that he has moved out into a cabin, boarded up windows, all this stuff. He checks his voicemails. There's one from Warren saying that he hasn't been seen in months. There's one from his wife saying that he needs to sign the divorce papers because he's gone off the deep end here. And then there's a third one that says, "Scratch, scratch," and laughing noises. And as he freaks out, he's holding his gun, watching the door. Door on the opposite side of the cabin opens up, and there's the Joker saying "peekaboo," and he grabs Tommy, drags him down to the basement, and Joker's like, "I've been working down here for months, and you never so much as brought me a beer. That's not very friendly of you." And he's like, "Why are you doing this?" And he's like, "Oh, I got a whole thing with the reservoir, and by the way, check this out." And he shows off that he's wearing Nightwing's face, and he's like, "It's not the real thing, but I just need to convince Bats that it is for just a little bit, so I'm just going to keep working on that." And Thomas, to his credit, has a gun, puts it at the back of Joker's head, and he's just like, "I'm not going to be afraid of you. I'm taking you out. Batman won't do it, but I will." And he's like, "All right, go ahead, do it." And so he pulls the trigger. It's a water gun. And Joker's like, "Seriously? You didn't think I would you're working with a professional here." And so Thomas gets gassed by his flower, and we see sometime later the cops have arrived, and he says, "I got security cameras everywhere. You can check out everything. Oh God, it was so awful." And so Bullock comes back and he's like, "Hey man, we checked the tapes. You just went down to the basement and started screaming for like 3 hours until you fell asleep. That's nothing else happened." He's like, No, I saw him. He was right here. He's always been here. He's been in the basement." And Bullock's like, "Okay, we're going to take you to a place that's going to be able to take care of you, all right?" So we then cut to Arkham now as we see him going down to visit his visitor. Endgame's going on outside, and it's Warren who's come in saying like, "Hey, it's hell out there. It's all Joker stuff. I figured you'd want to get out of this too. You're here voluntarily. You didn't commit any crimes. Like, you can leave whenever you want. You're not a danger to anybody. We're going to get out of here. We're going to Boston." And he's just like, "No, I'm good." And Warren's like, What are you talking about? You're good. What do you mean?" He's like, "Warren, you were never a good friend of mine, but I have a friend here in Arkham, and he visits me every day. I don't want to go with you." So Warren's like, "Are you... what?" So Thomas walks off. He goes back to his cell, and he's like, "No, seriously, you don't have to worry about me anymore." And so Warren heads off, and as Tommy gets back in his cell, he's like, "Oh, Eric, thank God you're here," talking about Dr. Eric Border. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so happy. I thought that he had gotten to you. Promise me you won't get hurt. I've needed you so much. Promise me, Eric." And of course, Eric Borden is the Joker. That's been revealed several times. So he's there in the cell with him. Yeah. It's a messed up story, man. It doesn't have that much to do with Endgame. I do see where it ties in, but like, it's skippable. Not talking about whether or not it needs to be read, talking about the quality though. It does a damn good job of making Joker seem just that right level of, he doesn't take any of it seriously. It's all just a game to him, and also wildly insane and sadistic. Like, he's willing to do these horrific things, but also you just can't predict what he's doing. So I like it. I think it makes it a very interesting story here to just have a new character who just essentially pissed him off the wrong way one day, and that's it. That ruined his life. So yeah, I'm going to give this one I'll give it an 8. I think it actually deserves it. Art's good, writing's good, it makes the character of the Joker feel that much more terrifying. It's definitely a solid 8. Catwoman Annual number 2, written by Genevieve Valentine, art by Patrick Oliffe. So this is essentially the backstory to Eiko Hasegawa. This is, where did she come from? So we open up a while ago in Gotham. She is working in her family business, which is obviously crime, and they are down by the docks pulling some sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, you know, we've always planned perfectly. It's no big thing. It's a thing in our entire family. When all of a sudden, lights all kick on, and there's Catwoman, Selina Kyle, who's tripped the alarm and gotten away with some jewels. So as they're doing the stuff, Eiko watches on and just like, oh, yeah, I'm part of Gotham's biggest Yakuza family. But that night when I saw Catwoman, changed everything. So police are coming up, and we see that she, ruined their night. So we get the backstory that her relationship with her father is very strained. Her father brought in a second cousin named Ken, who he's saying is going to be a potential heir, despite the fact that he is so removed, in order to kind of froth up a bit of anxiety in his daughter, get her to like be part of things more. But she actually really likes the second cousin, so it didn't really end up working out. So as they're doing this, it's like, all right, so do we have that night at the docks under control? And she's like, yeah, it was just police, not an actual problem. And just like, do we know who she was, who caused it? And she's like, I'm looking into it. It's like, look harder. I really want to know who this Catwoman person is. So it's now her full attention. She takes along Ken with her and just like, all right, let's go take care of this. We find out that for one of her birthdays, she got The Art of War from her father, and then got a book called The Pillow Book. I'm unfamiliar with it, from her mother. And she says, oh, it's, the diary of life several 1,000 years ago, but the diary reveals too much about yourself. That's something that I realized then. So we see that she and Ken are out in Gotham. They manage to actually find Catwoman as she is in the middle of a fight on a rooftop with Batman, and they're just watching from street level as those two duke it out. And Catwoman and Batman hears some tussle going down on the street. There's a whole gang fight going on, so they start going down to break it up, and Catwoman's like, hey, I had plans tonight, and he's like, fine, go, whatever, I don't need you. We see one of the guys tells Eiko, hey, if you're not part of the Forster Lane gang, you should probably split. And she's like, cool. So she climbs up on top of the rooftops to then give chase to Catwoman. Ken's like, hey, please don't. But she doesn't listen. She manages to follow Selina across multiple rooftops and does actually stay close enough that as Selina takes off her mask to take a look at her jewels, she gets a good look at her face. Doesn't know her name, but gets a good look at her face. So she goes back to her father and says like, hey, I got her face, working on the name, don't worry about it. And he's like, cool. Why wasn't Ken on that rooftop with you? And he's saying it very accusatorily, and she's like, what did you do with him? And he's just like, nothing, he's in a car downstairs. So either option A, he goes back home, or B, he apologizes by me cutting off part of his finger. And she's like, he didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who chose to follow. And it's like, yeah, and he didn't decide what's going to happen to him. So she sends Ken back to Japan, and Eiko's like, no one else deals with Catwoman. I'm doing this alone from now on. So around this time, Miss Selena Kyle takes over as the head of the Calabrese family, and she starts out small, heads down to some local diners and stuff like that, some bars, gets to know the actual lowlives, and then that catches the attention of the bigger heads of the family, where then she's able to start pulling some punches. And this entire time, Aiko's keeping tabs on her, just like, she came out of nowhere, no one knows who she is, but like, she's making waves. And immediately I recognize her, because while Selena started rising up through the ranks, Catwoman disappeared. She no longer showed up. And so she's thinking, like, I need to know what triggered this change, what happened here. So we see down by, the training stuff and all that, Aiko comes down, and her father's like, hey, it's been a while since you came down here. Look, I expect you to do your duty for this family. And they're basically saying, the Calabrese family came to us with a deal. What we're going to do is we're going to take this opportunity to expand our territory at a point where the Calabrese family can't retaliate against us. So we're going to go do that. It's going to be this tiny piece of neighborhood. We don't even need it, but we're going to take it just as a show of, we can do this and you can't mess with us. And she's like, that's a stupidly risky idea, but all right, so be it. So she thinks, people are going to get hurt. People are going to be killed here, because to take territory, you just got to start killing members of whatever family currently owns it. So she goes into her wardrobe and manages to sew her own Catwoman outfit. And so she takes over the name of Catwoman, and she goes down to the place until she sees the guy who warned her to get out of there that first night. And she drops in, and the guy's like, whoa, hey, didn't you kick our asses before? And she's like, yeah, but now I'm giving you a favor. And he's like, all right, what? And she's like, this neighborhood's going to be a hot commodity soon. Anyone who can't fight might want to get out. And he's like, oh, all right, noted, picked up on. So she left off and says, like, all right, well, that's a good night's work. So we see that as she arrives the next day to take over the neighborhood, the Calabrese family's already there. And the Nick is just like, hey, we've already spoken for you. You might want to get out of here. And she's like, fair enough. Can't argue with that. Bye. So she heads off. The father is then like, how could they have known? How was that going to happen? She's like, I guess they asked for protection. I mean, that could be anything. So at that point, she's like, all right. We'll see what the Calabreses want. We'll work with them for a little bit without doing too much in making waves. And then we get the time span here of showing Selena living more of that double life, becoming head of the family and whatnot, while Aiko starts owning up more and more to becoming Catwoman and watching Selena from afar. And finally we get the part where she's talking to her father, and the father is basically like, look, if we can't manage to do anything with them, so be it. We'll just work with them if that's how it needs to be. But we are going to have to do negotiations through our overseas things. So you're going to have to start talking to your grandfather. Mind you, she knows this is also now going to involve Ken. So she calls him up out of Ori and says, like, hey, there's something that's going to be going down with her grandfather, like the whole stuff down at the docks. Don't go. Make any excuse. Do not show up there. It will not go well. And he's like, oh, you're going to get me killed. Like, if I don't show up there, like, they're going to think I'm useless. And he's like, trust me, it's going to be worse if you do show up. So we see Aiko is practicing, like, throwing knives and stuff like that. Not to kill, but to scare. And she's still keeping an eye on Selena all the while, saying, like, I don't know why I'm still following her. I just want her to do something. I'm waiting on her to do something here. So at that point, we see that Aiko puts back on the Catwoman outfit, goes out one night to watch Selena from on top of the building across the street. And that's where she gets in a limo. Selena does. And Aiko's about to give chase. And Batman shows up and just like, hey, what's with the outfit? That ain't yours. And she's like, didn't seem like anyone was using the name at the time. And it's like, do you have anything to do with Selena Kyle? It's like, not really. And it's like, okay, then why are you following her? It's like, that's just entirely a separate thing. I promise, like, are we going to fight now? Is that what's happening? And he's like, no, not unless you do something stupid. Maybe you should go home to make sure you don't do anything stupid. And Batman leaps off the building to follow Catwoman, or Selena, I should say. And Catwoman's just like, all right, fair enough. I will head back home now. So she goes down to the street. She's immediately attacked by some gang members who recognize Catwoman, and so she manages to fight against them. And as she's doing so, the guy that she warned before comes up saying like, hey, please don't knife my friends, and just like, I was just using some practice, no problem. So she gets back home, she puts away her stuff. Her father comes in and says, hey, bad news. Ken turned out to be useless, so we took care of him. I know you liked him. Sorry about that. And she's like, great. Thanks, Dad. So she's pissed off now. She's like, all right, well, I'm not going to reward them. I'm going to work against my father as much as humanly possible here, and I'm going to use the Catwoman persona to do this. He's gone against me one too many times here. So we see her sitting on a building saying like, all right, Selena's coming to see us. That will be the opening move of the new game that I'm playing. So yeah, that was another thing throughout this thing, is she talks about how her dad never lost any games of Go, and it's because she just keeps on letting him win. She keeps on letting him have that. That's her strategy. So yeah, no, it's interesting. I do think that the main book could have probably used a little bit more intrigue on her. Like, we got the part where it was revealed she was Catwoman, but then we spent an entire issue after that barely had any focus on her. I want her to be more of like the second supporting character if we're going to have an issue like this. But it does add a lot to her character. It does define some things, and if we move forward with her being a bigger part to play, I'm all for it. I'm very interested. But this one, Selena's barely an actual player in it. She's just kind of the reason that all of this happened. So yeah, it's a solid written issue. I did a horrible job of recapping it, but c'est la vie. I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I think it's definitely worth that much at least. Probably just shy of the 8, but 7.5 sounds fair. Grayson Annual Number 1, written by Tim Seeley and Tom King, art by Stephen Mooney. So, welcome to Ireland. This book is just the most Irish book possible, so pretend that everything I say is in an Irish accent. We get two characters named Rock and Patty. And Rock is telling the story like, oh, have you ever heard the story of the Giants of the Causeway? And the other guy's like, no. So he starts saying like, oh, we got Finn McCumhel, who is this giant, and he lived on one side, and on the other side of this river, he saw another giant named Benendonner. And apologies if I'm messing all that up. And Patty keeps on interrupting, like, hey, when was this story? Like, who is this guy? Like, why were they fighting? And Rock's just like, dude, it's a story. Here in Ireland, all we have are two things, rain and stories. You're going to have to just enjoy them. So it turns out that Rock is leading Patty over to his car and says, hey, you want to check her out? And he opens up the trunk and says, do you think St. Francis would be angry if you didn't confirm that it's her? And he opens up the trunk, and we don't get to see immediately what's inside, but he says, that doesn't look like her. This woman's Chinese. And it's like, that's not Chinese. Check this out. And he pokes the face a little bit, and everything goes blurry. And it's like, yeah, see, it's one of those things where it just makes you see what you think you want to see. But this is her. This is Helena Bertinelli, the most wanted woman in the world. And we see inside the trunk, it is definitely Helena. So she's like, oh, yeah, brilliant, Rock. You actually did it. So we cut to a pub where Patty's calling someone saying, like, I'm telling you, I've seen her. It's the real deal. You're going to want to get down here. He says he won't do it for me, money or no money. He wants to meet St. Francis, the big guy in charge of all this. So Patty and Rock meet up with another person. I'm not sure what her name is immediately, but he's basically like, oh, yeah, you know, they call me Rock and Rob because I used to dance all the time. And she's like, okay, and it's like, oh, well, I bet you're wondering how I came across Miss Helena Bertinelli, how I got her trapped here. Well, back in the day, I used to make bombs for a certain Irish political group, and then that got the attention of larger ones. I went and did some jobs overseas until finally I got a job in Gotham for Professor Pig's group, but something went wrong, and we had an accident. He takes off his hat and shows that he has a giant scar on his head. And he's like, yeah, it wasn't actually the explosion that did this. It was one of their masks that was caught in the explosion. But yeah. I came home to recover. I barely had any money, so I resumed my bomb making stuff. And as I was making bombs for people, there she was, just hanging out in this group of people. She just the most wanted woman in the world. And like I had no idea why she was there, but yeah, no, I had to take her. So basically says I want to do it. I want to talk to St. Francis himself. And she's like, look, I don't know what you've heard. I don't know what you want to do, but that's not really how this works. But he's like, oh, well, you know, us Irish and our stories and whatnot. So he then explains a bit more of the backstory, saying like, yeah, says that she's here. You know, the granddaughter of Frank Bertinelli, one of the biggest crime lords of all time, the head of the entire Sicilian mob. And then she was supposed to inherit it all and just walked away one day, disappeared. And here she is just in the middle of this. But weirdly enough, everyone else kept on referring to her as this Chinese woman named Cheshire. And like no one else was able to see it coming. But also she had a bodyguard nearby. And they kept on referring to him as an assassin named Headhunter. But I worked with Headhunter. That ain't Headhunter. This guy is white and has black hair and is definitely not Headhunter. So at this point, they're inside a pub. They're shooting down drinks, as Rock's explaining. And he's like, and that's when I figured it out. They got this thing, something I heard about from Professor Pig's people. It's called hypnos. It makes people see what you want to see. And for some reason, my head injury made it so that I am not susceptible to it. And I was able to see right through it. So one night as they're exiting the bomb-making facility, he manages to fall behind the two of them, and he shoots Dick Grayson in the back, just leaving him for dead, and tases Helena to then bind her up and throw her in the trunk of his car. So she's like, oh, okay, hold on. I've had one too many to drink. I'm just going to head off and use the head. So while he's gone, we get that Patty talks to the female contact here. I should get her name at some point, but regardless, she's like, look, we can't confirm this. Like, how would he even know about hypnos? And it's just like, well, he'd know if he was in Spiral. And Patty's like, if he was in Spiral, he wouldn't be telling us about the hypnos. He'd just be using it. I think this guy's legit. So Rock comes back and he's just like, all right, so what do you say? So they are now hopped in the car. They're driving somewhere, and he explains, yep, I want to, pay this off. I want to do this for money, but I specifically want to go meet St. Francis, who is the godfather of the Green, a head of the mob around here, and shake his hand. Because they say if you shake St. Francis' hand, you can trust him more than you can trust God himself. And he explains the only reason Helena's not able to escape is because he tied her up using one of his bombs that is set to his heart rate monitor that he's got on a watch around his wrist. So he's able to keep her completely contained, can't escape, and if anything happens to him, she'll die as well. So at that point, it's just like, all right, fair enough. So the girl says, all right, let's do it. So they head out into the nearby park. Rock's drunk off his ass. Patty holds a gun to his head as he's like just singing in the rain, and the woman's just like, hey, I know a man in Gotham. He'll confirm if your story's true, but you're not moving until then. So she goes off to make the call as Rock just continues to sing, and Patty's just like, hey man, look, you talk too much, all right? I don't know what this thing is about you wanting to meet St. Francis, but like, you shouldn't be doing this. And Rock's like, hey, that girl's pretty cute. The first love of my life was a ginger. Second one, too. First one taught me to walk. Second one taught me to fly. And he's like, shut up. Rock, for the love of God, shut up. So as he seems to be getting a bit more shaky with his trigger finger, in comes the girl and just says, hey, I talked to my guy. Malone says that he's legit. And Rock's just like, oh, you mean Matches Malone? Yeah, me and him had a whole history. Yeah, I've known him my whole life. So we then see Rock, he's told, okay, this is going to happen tomorrow. We're going to do it. You get the money. He gets the girl. And they head out to the cliffs, I believe of Dover. And as they're driving out there, Patty's like, hey, you never finished that story about the Giants. Tell me how that ended. And he's like, oh, yeah, of course. Never a good excuse to tell a story. So as the two giants were squaring down against each other, Finn was ready to go. And then as Ben and Donor came over, he's like, oh, wait, he's significantly bigger than me. So Finn ran away, and he ran back to his wife hidden in his house. She took the clothes and started wrapping him up in whatever fabrics he had as he was just cowering in fear. And as Benedona came to the house, as he started wailing and crying, he's like, oh, what's wailing so much in there? And the wife's like, it's my baby. You've woken him up. Just wait until his father gets here. And Benedona sees how big the baby is, just pictures how big the father must be, and so runs off back across the causeway and cuts it all up with his giant axe as he does so. So then we get a 2-page spread, which is literally just a map of Ireland, and like everything they have river dancing, they have ale, they have geese of some sort. It's just a map of Ireland, and it's just saying like, yep, because that's what we Irish are all about, our stories. So they pull over the car, they open up the trunk, get out Helena, and in comes St. Francis, who is literally green and looks like an old school like friar monk. And he's like, and I don't mean a green body, I mean like a green aura, a glow about him, saying like, I am here, thy payment is here, thou may go. And he's like, oh, Jesus, I want to shake your hand, though. And Patty's like, don't do it, man. You're asking for too much here. And he's like, I still got the bomb on her. I just want to shake your hand. I want to trust you like I can trust in God. And so St. Francis is like, all right. And so he outstretches his hand, does it. And Rock goes for the punch straight into the face, knocking out Francis. We then get the reveal that, of course, Rock was not just Rock. It was Grayson. It was Dick. Helena was not actually tied up. She gets the drop on the other two, and they tie the pair of them up and say, like, there we go. We've got Mr. Francis. He had the potential to see through Hypnos, so Dick was actually wearing just a real prosthetic the entire time rather than Hypnos. But now they managed to get the Paragon that he had, so all's good and going. The girl and Patty are just, like, pissed off that all of this happened. And they say, all right, well, we're just going to have to wipe their memory. And the girl's like, oh, you're nothing but a liar. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm a good story. So we then cut to later, and Patty is on his knees. The girl's got him at gunpoint. And she's like, why don't I remember any of what you're saying? And he's like, I don't know. They said that they'd wipe our memories, and then they wiped yours, and then they started to wipe mine, but it started raining, and I guess it didn't take. I don't know why I remember this, and you don't. And she's like, that's not good enough. How am I supposed to? You want me to say that super spies are the reason that Francis is gone? That he's dead? It is, no, man, I got to come back with something better than that. I'm going to say you did it. I'm going to say you did it, and that's going to be my cover. They'll believe that. And he's like, no, I swear to God, that's not what happened. But she fires the shot. She kills Patty and says, oh, well, it's just another story after all. So, I mean, I haven't been to Ireland, but boy, howdy, this may as well just be a tourist brochure at that point. It is, like, I have to assume one of them went to Ireland, or at least spent a significant amount of time there between Tim Seeley and Tom King, because, like, goddamn, this is so painfully Irish. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fine enough issue. It's just another issue of Grayson, though, slightly longer, a little bit interesting in the way that they tell the story, but, like, I don't know, maybe it's because I don't have a connection to Ireland. It just lacks a bit of that punch, a little bit of like that. Oh man, that was so like the last issue of Grayson had that. This one was like, okay. So overall, I think I'm probably just going to give it a flat 7. It's still very well done. It's still one of the top tier books DC is putting out, but like, I don't know. It just didn't feel like it lived up to, yeah, that deserved to be a double length annual issue, So 7. Red Hood and the Outlaws Annual Number 2, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Tom Derenick. It's a holiday issue. It's weird. So we open up with some random household where I'm going to say 8-year-old group of Jason Todd, Corey Starfire, and Roy Harper Arsenal are watching Santa Claus through the railing of some stairs. And they're like, oh, stop, we don't want them to see us. And, like, I think it's implied that this is the, like, Bruce Wayne, like, the manor. But obviously it's not, because, like, they didn't grow up together. And so they stumble over the railing. They make a big noise. Santa sees them. But it turns out it isn't Santa. It's Susie Sue, who was a villain of Jason's at some point. So she opens up gunfire. They all jump behind a couch to hide from them. And we get this whole thing of like Roy being like, hey, how is this couch able to hold up to these bullets? It seems kind of flimsy. And Starfire's like, why did I run? I'm a warrior. And Jason's like, everyone shut up. I got it out. I got a plan. Let's kill her. So they come out from behind the couch. Starfire's got loaded up. Jason's got a gun. Roy's there. And they unload hellfire upon Susie Sue to the point where her rib cage is splayed out in the open. So she's dead. And then she disintegrates into a candy cane, which Jason swipes up and says, #snooze/lose. You can tap out now if you want, because that's about as far as I was going to go. Then Batman comes in, he picks up Roy, and it's just like, do you guys think this is acceptable for house guests on Christmas Eve, no less? And so he picks up Corey, Jason, them, and throws them down to a basement, and says, you three can stay down there until you learn to behave. And Jason's like, don't you wonder what happened to the real Santa Claus? And Batman says no, and slams the door on them. So they're all in the dark, and Corey's like, hey, how about we light up to see where we are? And it turns out they're down in the Batcave, at least a very childish-looking version of the Batcave. And as they're looking at this place, Jason's like, hey, focus, guys, we need to figure out how to get to the roof. If Susie Sue killed Santa, maybe she left his sled up there. So Roy's like, okay, well, how are we going to get out that way? And Jason, having the most horrifying looking grin I've ever seen, gets onto the dinosaur, busts out through the roof of the Batcave, and they land up on the roof of the building. How does one connect to the other? Don't question it. So then the dinosaur then transforms into a tiny little collectible candy cane, and Jason picks it up, and Roy points out, hey, over there, it's Santa's sleigh. So they hop in. Jason says, Roy, can you fly this thing? He's like, maybe. So he starts fiddling with buttons, doing what he can, and then he says, sled, start the engines, please. And it's like, oh, of course, yes, anything for you, Roy. So at that point, Batman kicks open the door, starts throwing batarangs, saying, like, get out of that sled and get back inside. So it takes off. Corey's just flying next to it, no problems whatsoever. There is an editor's note on the page where it flies away that says, we decided not to clutter this page with dialogue or sound effects. Happy holidays from the staff of Red Hood. They put a note on the page to say that they weren't going to put anything on the page. Okay, so chapter 2 opens, and we see them flying the sled. And it's getting chilly, but Corey uses her Starfire powers to keep them warm. And all of a sudden, Jason gets like a cluster headache as the other two are just talking to each other. And Jason's like, did you guys not just notice that my head just like started exploding? And they're just like, no. It's like, all right, well, regardless, something's wrong here. I don't think we even knew each other when we were young. In fact, I don't think we are young. What the heck's going on around here? And then all of a sudden Starfire's like, check it out! And they point down to the ground, and they show that Santa's workshop is on fire with plenty of elves just dead outside. So they land the sled, and as they come down, Jason's got his red hood now on because he was without it this whole time. And they say, oh, we should check out the workshop, or we should check out Santa's house first. But Corey goes over to check on the reindeer. So they go into the stable. It's dark in there as well. So Corey lights it up, same way as the Batcave. And inside, all of the reindeer are horrifically, disgustingly, disturbingly rabid. And so Corey distinguishes her light. They're now fighting in the dark, and they just light it up with, silhouettes of them going around killing all these reindeer, including someone stabbing Rudolph through the nose with a doot sound effect. So they kill all the reindeer. The reindeer then disintegrate into another candy cane. And I don't know, something happens where Jason disappears for one panel and says, like, now I'm right behind you guys. Chapter 3, Santa's bunker. They find a giant vault door, too big for Corey to burn through, but it opens up, and as they step inside, it's this icy wonderland. So they have to split up to investigate it. Roy goes down one path that's full of giant nutcrackers. He lights up a flare arrow, and Jason, who's narrating, says, you know, whenever Roy leaves, it's not that I don't trust him, but it's like, if he's not near me, it's like he doesn't even exist. Like I made him up. And we see this white fade out effect as Roy goes, I get it now. And then Corey hears a scream from across however far, says, oh, Roy, I'm coming. But before she can go, she's attacked by a giant gingerbread lady who claims that she is Mrs. Claus. Prepare to die here in the dark bakery of 1,000 bites. And Corey gets overtaken by Gingerbread Man as she fades out to white. So Jason finally makes his way to Santa's office, and he hears Corey's screams and just like, well, that can't possibly be true because Corey's able to take care of herself, no problem. So he steps in. Santa is sitting staring at the fire saying, like, Susie Sue was bait. You had Batman tell us to stay because you knew we'd rebel, and you gave me little candy prizes along the way. You were leading me here the whole time. And Santa just evilly twirling his mustache is like, yes, Jason, I've been a very naughty boy, and you were the boy to do something about it. And he stands up and approaches Jason, and Jason's got his gun pulled. He's still 8. And Santa's like, do it, go ahead, shoot me, do it, punk, shoot me. And Jason casts down his gun and says, no. And then all of a sudden, chapter 4, we're real life now. There's a portal. Jason is standing in front of it in the Arctic. There's a lizard creature coming out of it saying, shoot me, what are you doing? I said shoot me. And Jason's like, okay, that was all a psychic illusion thing. What the hell's actually going on? And he's like, oh, my name is Plitus. I used to work for the guy who kidnapped Starfire. Well, actually, I worked for Hellspawn. You remember Hellspawn, right? I worked for him to get Starfire's powers active, and when I failed, Hellspawn threw me into a portal that was suffering in the frozen wasteland of Earth for all eternity. But there was an earthquake that shifted it just enough that I could get out a little psychic message, and I got it out to you, because if I send it to Starfire, she might just torture me some more. And he's like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? He's like, I want to die. I've been here forever. Please just kill me. And Jason goes, okay, and shoots him and says, well, you know, it is Christmas after all. And he points up at a nearby camera and says, oh, by the way, Hellspawn, I've heard your name before. If you ever come to Earth, and then he says a bunch of stuff in some alien text that I'm sure is decipherable. And he says, and I'm going to be waiting here with a bullet with your name on it. And then he climbs out of the thing and says, Merry Christmas. And our final page is Hellspawn watching the tape with Blackfire next to him saying, tell me everything you know about this Red Hood and his outlaws. Okay. Look. Shockingly, not the worst issue I've read of this series. Like, there's been some real stinkers in this. But this issue, like, it tested me, man. It was an endurance test. So, is it good? No. No. It is interesting. It is creative. It is abundantly stupid, but it's not good. I don't know. I think that there is a level of humor here that, like, you could tell they were at least trying, but, like, it's such an example of everything I dislike about Scott Lobdell's writing. Like, all this, like, yeah, look at us, we're leaning on the fourth wall, check it out, guys, yeah, we're making little sly references to things, and then you end it with Hellspawn. Stop with Hellspawn. I thought we were done with Hellspawn. So yeah, 4. I give it a 4. That seems pretty fair to me, all things considered. It is the only book, I think, that makes a direct Christmas reference of saying it is Christmas time here. And boy howdy, did it not live up to that. Harley Quinn number 13, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin. So, last issue, Sportsmaster and Clock King were attacking, but then we did a whole space thing, and we didn't actually deal with that. So now we are. So everyone squares off, they all yell fight at each other, and then Power Girl just immediately launches in, punches Sportsmaster in the face hard enough that he loses his roller skates, and he's just done. She's wearing a wedding dress at this point, which is a tie into a book that we'll eventually get to, but she rips it off, and Clock King and Harley watch on just like, damn, she can beat me up anytime. And Harley's like, wait a minute, hold on, that's my partner. So she punches Clock King. Then Sportsmaster comes back with a short-range nuke. And Harley's like, Power Girl's like, hey, can I withstand that? And she's like, yeah, but probably not everybody else here, so we're all going to bail. And so everyone starts running out of the shopping center. He fires off the nuke. Power Girl catches it and says, okay, so is this thing like if the tip gets hit, or is it a timer? And then it explodes. So Clock King's like, okay, well, it seems I have no choice if my partner was caught up in that. So he pulls out his clock and manages to use time travel to go back a minute in time. He runs into the thing in like frozen time and grabs Sportsmaster and gets out. The explosion still happens, but they escaped. So at that point, Power Girl lands, and Harley's like, oh, hey, are you all right? And meanwhile, her hair is just blown back. It's like straight up, and Harley just starts laughing hysterically. So Power Girl picks her up, brings her into the high atmosphere as she still laughs, and then drops her. And Harley's like, oh, okay, I'll stop. I get it. No more laughing. I learned my lesson. And so right as she's about to crash back into the ground, Power Girl grabs her. She's like, all right, so what lesson did you learn? And she's like, whenever your hair looks absolutely stupid, like a baby chimp stuck its finger in a lamp socket. And so she drops her again. And Harley's like, okay, I learned that you're very sensitive, and I can't fly, and also not to make fun of my beautiful partner. So she catches her again and says, like, all right, we just need to keep an eye out on the news for Sportsmaster and stuff. That's better than doing normal, actual investigative heroics. So they arrive back Coney Island. They drop off on the roof of their building. Tony is loading up the dog poop catapult to fire off again. And Tony says, hey, by the way, your Strong Woman Act is on tonight at 8 p.m. And they're like, oh, but our clothes all got destroyed in the nuke. And she's like, Tony says, no big deal. I got tons of costumes downstairs. I got something for you, Blondie. And Power Girl picks up Tony being like, I don't think anybody talks to me like that. And he's like, oh, well, of course I do. You and I had an entire romantic relationship. We were lovers at one point, and very hot and sweaty ones. And Power Girl's like, oh, I don't like that idea, but if you say so, I wish that I remembered anything. So she says she's going to go down and get changed. Harley's like, can I watch? And Tony's like, how about me? And they're like, no and no. So Tony fires off a poop catapult at some chocolate shop, and he's like, hey, you two are cute together. You bring an idea, you got a regular sitcom. And Harley says, oh, we're running out of holidays and gimmicks like that Rub and Smell comic. Because the fourth wall just doesn't exist. And they say, like, all right, well, make sure you get your new buddy to the show on time. So Power Girl gets out of the shower. We meet up with Edgar, a.k.a. Eggsy, who was introduced in, I believe, the annual? I don't think it was the Rub and Smell one. I don't know. Regardless, he's there with a bunch of different outfits. And Power Girl's like, oh, you're not from Florentine 5, are you? And he's like, no, I'm from here, upstate New York. And Harley just gets a kick out of that, because this dude is an egg, in case that wasn't made clear. So she puts on an outfit, and she goes down to do her show. Tony introduces her as the super strong monkey woman Beatrice La Bamba. And we see she's wearing just this super skimpy cave woman sort of getup. And Harley's wearing a gorilla suit. So she's like, hey, just go ahead, like flex, show off your muscles, do whatever. And so she flexes, accidentally hits one of the lights up on the stage that bonks her on the head. And Harley and Tony are like, oh no, is she going to remember everything now? But she doesn't. She keeps on flexing. She shows off her muscles. A bunch of people in the audience are like, oh my God, please sit on me. Well, some other people are like, I think that's Power Girl. That's like definitely Power Girl. Why is she doing this? And she's like, I can hear them whisper that I'm Power Girl. What do I do? And Tony's like, don't worry, I got a distraction. So he releases a bunch of monkeys on stage that then start climbing all over Power Girl. Harley, meanwhile, is watching TV and sees that Sportsmaster and Clock King are off doing something. And as she goes to get Power Girl off stage, she's literally spanking a monkey. So anyway, they take off. They go to a huge, I don't know, place. It's just some business as far as I could take it. And it's surrounded by SWAT teams and stuff like that. And Harley's like, hey, wait a minute. You can't just leave me up on top of this building. Put me down in Central Park. Go and get them and then come back for me and we can beat them up together. So she flies Harley over to Central Park. While she's there, a mugger goes after Harley, and Harley's like, look at my outfit. Where would you think I'd be keeping any money in this? And he's like, I don't know, your bra? And she's like, does it look like I'm wearing a bra? You can see, I got a boob window going on here. And he's like, look, I don't know. It's just compared to your friend, it looks like you don't really need one. To them, which Harley says, but you haven't seen my best asset, as she turns around and shows off her ass to the mugger. To which then Power Girl comes in and says, seriously, you have like no shame. Picks up the mugger, brings him to a prison in New Jersey, and then brings back Clock King and Sportsmaster. And they were thrown up into the atmosphere. Sportsmaster's like, I don't like this. I'm going to attack you. He zaps Power Girl, blasts her against a tree. Meanwhile, Harley has taken the opportunity to shoot both of them. Sportsmaster through the hand, Clock King through the leg, and he's like, Jesus, what? Heroes don't do this. What kind of heroes are you? So at that point, the police arrive, and Power Girl's like, all right, cool, let's talk to them. They can sort this out. And Harley's like, no, we don't stay because it's braggadocious. We got to bail out. That's how we always do things. So they bail out, and as they fly over, back over, I think, onto their building, Power Girl's like, I really wish I knew more about my history, like where I came from. And Harley's like, okay, you were born in Nebraska, your parents had superpowers, and you got a blend of both of them. And Power Girl's like, are they still alive? And she's like, that's a good question. How old are you? Power Girl's like, I don't know. It's like, well, you never told me about your parents because it would be able to be tortured out of me by our enemies. And this entire issue, she keeps on having stuff dropped onto her head, and they keep on going like, oh no, is this how she gets her memories back? And a bird flies overhead and poops on Power Girl's head, and that's how she gets her memories back. And she calls out Harley for being a liar, and she's like, I don't like liars. I'm grateful that I never was lovers with Tony. That makes me feel better, but like, you got 30 seconds to convince me not to throw you up into the atmosphere. And Harley's like, hey, we stopped some real criminal activity, and we bonded together, and we went shopping, and we went to that planet where you hooked up with you-know-who. Okay, forget that part. But, like, we were a criminal crime-fighting team, and you really liked me, and I thought we were friends. So, at that point, Power Girl's like, all right, well, fine, I guess. And Harley gets all the waterworks, being like, can you please forgive me, pretty please? And she's like, look, I don't know what to do with you. And Harley says, I got an idea. How about we go downstairs and we slip into, and she starts whispering. And then we cut to Harley being left at the very top peak spire of the Eiffel Tower saying, Power Girl, please come back. I was just kidding. When I said French, I didn't mean actual France. And then we get, I think the writer or an artist is just randomly drawn on this page. Sure. Yep. That's a Harley Quinn issue. I'm going to give that a 5.5. Look, what do you want me to say? It's Harley. This book, when I am collecting comics outside of the New 52, just like modern day stuff, my one rule is that it needs to be in continuity. Like, I try, I'll do Elseworlds and stuff like that because you could technically argue like the multiverse stuff, but like the things I don't pick up are things that are like, video game tie-ins and stuff that like so clearly cannot happen in the main universe. This feels like that. Like everything that goes on in this book feels like it could not possibly be happening in the rest of the DC universe. And that's fine. That's okay. You're allowed to have those books, but it's just one of those things that I don't want to read. I like the things that I feel like are impacting the larger world as a whole, following people that I can see popping up in other things. Yes, Power Girl's in this book, but you know, Power Girl's also over in Earth 2, and all the other things that Earth 2 is getting up into. And you know what she didn't mention? Any goddamn thing to do with Harley Quinn. I think I said a score. I think I said like 5.5, maybe. I don't even know if that was for this. Regardless, it's Harley Quinn. If you love it, you love it. If you don't, you don't. And that's not going to change. Superman Wonder Woman number 14, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Doug Mahnke. This is picking up from last issue, where we met a new hero named Wonder Star, who just seems swell. But this issue picks up with a pair of eyes. We don't recognize of whom's yet, but it seems like some sort of goddess, something to do with Wonder Woman, because she's basically saying, you know, I get men. Men are stupid, but predictable. Women, though, Jesus, can't understand what they're going to do. And then she goes off on this whole thing about how Queen Hippolyta is the worst, and Wonder Woman is even worse, and so now it is up to her, this person we're talking, or is talking, to save the world herself. And we cut over to the Wonder Star stuff. So back at the power plant, we see Atomic Skull and all that are being wheeled away. And the cops are talking to Superman and Wonder Woman. And Wonder Star pops in being like, hey, hi, how's it going? Wonder Star, that's me. How's it going? Just trying to do the right thing, you know? Just doing that, working with Superman and Wonder Woman. And the cop's like, yeah, cool. And Superman's like, yeah, hey, we'll go ahead and deal with... And Wonder Star's just like, you know, I'm really hoping that I can get my favorite heroes here to help me train my gifts. But I bet they're not even going to believe me that I am a hero, you know? There's all that. And Superman's like, officer, we're going to take this guy. We'll go through this normal Justice League route to give you our statement on the skull and whatnot. Bye. So they lift up Wonder Star, and Wonder Star's like, hey, it's cool. I can fly. I can join you up here. So he flies around. And he's like, sorry, I haven't gotten full control of my powers, and I didn't want people in danger if I get out of hand. But, hey, can you guys come follow me? I want to show you something. And Wonder Woman just turns to Superman as Wonder Star flies away. He's like, this is going to be one of those days, isn't it? So they fly somewhere outside of New York. And we see there's this giant crater that he landed in. And he's like, yeah, I don't really remember anything about who I am. I woke up in this crater with these powers and this uniform, and that's it. But I do remember that the reason that I want to keep people safe is because of you guys. You're the reasons why. And Superman's like, all right, well, we need to get you checked out, man. We can't like have you just doing that. And he's like, right, totally. Hold on. People are in danger. I'll be right back. And he just gives and flies off. And Superman's like, all right, look, we'll go ahead and do what we got to do here. So they go up and they follow Wonder Star, and it's like, look, we're going to give you some latitude. You lead the way. We're going to see what's up. So they go to the New York Federal Reserve, where Mammoth, Debutante, and Crash. By the way, those latter two, Debutante's dressed up as like a bride, and Crash is literally just a crash test dummy. And they're stealing money from the Federal Reserve. And I'm sure they got this whole thing going on there. But they have this portal. They're working for somebody where they are just pouring money into the portal and it ends up somewhere else. And that's where Superman, Wonder Woman, and Wonder Star come in and start beating them up. Wonder Star goes and helps out the guards that were being attacked. And he's just like, hey, are you guys all right? And he's like, yeah, who are you? I was like, I'm Wonder Star. I'm with those guys. I'm with Superman and Wonder Woman. Is that not awesome? So at that point, Debutante comes up and like attacks him. She has some level of heat vision or energy blast from her eyes or something. And she's like, oh, silly boy. Didn't anyone tell you not to get between a woman and her shopping money? So Wonder Star's powers start activating. He's not sure what's happening, but it manages to trap Debutante where she is. And she's like unable to move as Wonder Woman uses her lasso to pull Wonder Star out of there. So Everyone else is taken care of. Everybody's put down. And as the lasso is still on Wonderstar, it's like, hey, are you okay? And he's like, oh, are you kidding? I've never felt better. Thanks for the save. And Wonder Woman's like, all right, you passed the test. And he's like, what? What's going on? And Superman's like, yeah, you got what you need. And it's like, yeah, it's not a perfect test, but he's at least thinks he's telling the truth. But there is this massive void in him, this missing sense of self. And he's like, hi, guys, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, look, the lasso, we needed you to not be on guard for it, so it had to be something a little bit sneaky, but we kind of looked at your brain and made sure you were cool. And he's like, you looked into my brain? That's so smart. I never would have thought of that. Oh, man, you guys are clever. I like you. So at that point, Mammoth is still there. And he's like, oh, you broke Mammoth's friends. And so Superman, Wonder Woman, and Wonderstar all throw simultaneous punches and knock him out. And Wonderstar's like, this is fun. I'm having fun. So they go back to Wonderstar's place with some pizza, and by place I mean his crater in the ground, and they're just looking over it. They can't find any sort of evidence of what it is, what's going on here. And he's like, hey, how is it to be in love? And they're like, what? Huh? And he's like, I mean, I'm just watching you guys. You guys got something going on. You got some chemistry. What's that? What's love feel like? I really like it, you know? And Wonder Woman's like, well, our relationship is amazing, but it's complicated. And Superman's like, and it's private. Sorry, man, don't really want to talk about that. And he's like, oh, no, I get it. I'm sorry if I overstepped my bounds. Also sucks that love is going to be the death of you. And Superman's like, I'm sorry, you said something? He's like, oh, God, my head, someone's breaking into my brain. And we see his powers go haywire, starts firing off energy blasts as some other voice starts possessing him. They try putting Wonderstar down, grabbing him to the ground. And he's like, oh, don't hate me. I'm sorry, I don't know who I am. And all of a sudden, a portal opens up behind them, and he looks up, and he's like, now I remember. And Superman is hit in the back by a trident, giant fork thing, and he goes down. Wonder Woman gets blasted by energy stuff as Wonderstar, seemingly possessed, goes over and grabs the trident, grabs the spear, and he transforms, and he says, who am I? As he gets a giant horned helmet and guns and straps and full 90s as he says, I am Magog, and I am here to save the world from you. All right, full disclosure, I've never read Kingdom Come. I know, I'm the worst. But I know Magog is from Kingdom Come. I know that is the origin therein. I also know that in like modern day, as this is being published, or as this episode is being made, I should say, the origin of Magog has been rewritten into current continuity. So I don't think this stands anymore. It's a bit awkward because of that, but it's interesting. We'll see where it goes from there. I'm interested to see who the hell Magog is. Whether or not I'm going to be able to understand this story without knowing Kingdom Come is a totally separate thing, but we'll roll with it. As for this issue, I think Wonderstar's fun. He's a little bit too kooky, but I think it works for how serious the other two characters are, of just having him be the more wild, offbeat character. And then it really does make it so that last page reveal doesn't just show up. You don't understand that he does seem like he is going to be evil. So I'm going to give this one a 7.5. I really did enjoy it, and the art is fantastic. Doug Mahnke does a fantastic job. Batman Eternal number 39, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Higgins, and Seeley, art by Felix Ruiz. So this issue opens up with Julia and Batman just in the cave doing whatever. Red Robin is giving a report on a code that was delivered, and he said, oh, it's super easy. It's like I was able to do it in my head. It says, Dad's old news, I place my bet on daughters. Don't know what that means. It's completely indecipherable, but at least I got the message for you. And Batman's like, cool, great, thanks, bye. Meanwhile, Julia apparently was framing searches and stuff like that in the database, looking for places that Wayne Enterprise owns, but didn't get moved over in the merger, and like some other weird stuff. Something in acquisitions. There was a roller rink uptown, a defunct casino hotel out on a mountain, and an auto shop by the docks. And Batman's like, oh, God, all right, I get it. I know where to go now. And he says, I know where the Riddler is. So this got a couple of different plots going on, but the first one we follow is the Arkham inmates that were captured last issue. They're being transported by SWAT to wherever, I guess, theoretically Arkham. But before they can get to wherever they're going, the car detours out, turns over, and we see that a bunch of other SWAT officers show up and just start blasting the ever-loving hell out of the cars, missing all of the inmates, but hitting all of the officers. And Mr. Freeze is there like, what in the hell is this? So we then go over to the Gotham Gazette where Vicky's talking to her boss, Warren. There's also a guy, Patrick, there, the intern who's working late. And Vicky's so upset by everything that's happened with Jason Bard, and Warren's basically like, look at yourself, woman. You're unwilling to do this story despite the fact that Gotham is falling apart out there. I didn't realize Vicky Vale was such a stupid little wimp. Get up, get out there, and get that story, because they're going to say awful things about you, but that's how you know you're getting closer to the truth. So we see Batman makes his way out to the casino hotel that was up on the mountain, and apparently it's called Bullseye Casino Resort. And as he walks in, there's a bunch of TVs all turned on, and they're all turned to Gotham News. And it's just people bitching and whining and saying, like, the traffic is horrible, and, like, the sewage system is getting contaminated into the water supply, and all this horrible stuff is going to the Arkham Asylum. What happened to Arkham? And so everyone's freaking out. It's getting worse and worse and worse. You see how everything's going bad. And Batman just yells out, Enigma! I cracked your code! Tell me what's up. And he looks at the card on the ground. He sees it's another one of those invites saying Gotham's going to fall. And he's like, your code was pitifully simple, Riddler. The hotel has a bullseye logo that's, the arrow is just a slightly off center. It's a little miss, aka the daughter that you place your bet on. Get it? A little miss? And Batman says, oh, but there are more layers to that. And we see Riddler's just sitting there like watching security cameras, just so proud of himself. And he's like, oh, but there's more to it than that. Fathers and daughters. Who is it? Joker's daughter? Talia al Ghul? Where am I supposed to be looking here, Riddler? Tell me what it is. You're a part of this too. And Riddler finally gets over the mic being like, nah, hardly. Look, you think I want to be a part of this? I ditched town the moment this showed up. This is sloppy. It's beneath me. Gotham's a bit too dicey right now. And Batman's like, I don't have time for puns, man. Tell me what's up. The code you left in your cell, you said our foe instead of your foe, which means you don't like this person either. And Riddler's like, wrong question. Here's the thing. I'm going to give you a chance to ask the right one. Gotham's got a future, and I'm sitting on a preview. And so Batman exits out of the hotel and starts climbing up the mountain that they're on. And Julia calls over like, you're climbing? You could fly up there, man. And he's like, nah, I don't have a place to land the plane. Besides, Enigma won't talk if I take it too easily. And as he starts climbing up the mountain, he sees little Riddler boxes on the way up. So back over with the Arkham inmates. There are a few other guards, like the guards that killed all the other guards are now trying to lead the inmates. And Bane's just like, all right, let's do it. And everyone just breaks out of their shackles and starts attacking the other guards here. But before anything can really happen, the back of one of the vans opens up, and inside is Ratcatcher, Firefly, Cluemaster, and Signalman, aka the ones who are behind all of this. And Joker's daughter, the gall of Joker's daughter to say, who shipped us a box of losers? To which then apparently Selina Kyle comes out of the car and says, hey, aren't you the least bit intrigued? Like, you guys wouldn't have shown up without an invite. I, however, did. I got an invite, so I'm here. And we see that a mysterious voice is talking to all of them. We don't know who it comes from yet. Meanwhile, back up on the mountain, there's a cabin that Riddler was sitting in, and Batman gets up to it, and he's like, all right, 20 minutes, not bad. And Batman's like, yeah, you said you were sitting on a preview, a small peak, aka the peak of the mountain. And Riddler's like, yeah, you want to know what would happen if you went up to the large peak? And he's like, no, tell me about the other Riddlers. Who's behind the attack on Gotham? And Riddler's just like, I don't know who's behind the attacks. Like, I'm not there. I'm literally out of town. I've been thinking about some other riddles, some of the hardest ones of all time. Hey, do you ever hear this one about the Blue Cliff record? And it's just immediately Riddler gets picked up by the throat, and he's like, I'm not playing. Who sent the invite? Who's behind the attacks? And Riddler's like, look, I said it already. If you're smart enough to read my code, then you already know the foe. Come on, Batman. You got this one. So back over with Vicky Vale. We see that Warren is trying to connect everything together. He's trying to see the larger picture here. They're saying the traffic jams, the prison riots, the Wi-Fi outages, the murders, Arkham, all that. It's all connected somehow. And Vicky's like, that's crazy. You're crazy. But I like it. And so she starts looking through it, being like, oh, there might be something here. And they notice some stuff of like, when Arkham collapsed, people said there were tunnels underneath that were stretching between the water supply and the sewer system. That's part of it right there. Meanwhile, over in the Arkham side of things, the guards get shot by giant bat mechs, which apparently are under control of this mysterious voice. And he's like, oh, this is happening, Signal Man. It's all yours for the taking. Merry Christmas. I have only one request in return. Go nuts. And now all the villains have access to the bat arsenal. So Riddler gets thrown out of his cabin, and Batman's just like, I'm done with this, man, seriously. And Riddler's like, dude, I didn't set a trap for you. I'm not trying to fight you. I'm not a part of this. They are trying to wear you down and exhaust you so you're not thinking anymore. If I want to beat you, I want it to be at your best. I want to beat the smart Batman, you know? Like, that's what time for me. And he's like, fine, but you're coming back to Gotham and you're going to help me out. And Riddler's like, no. And he clicks his button on his cane, which triggers all the Riddler boxes to explode, which causes a huge avalanche that catches up both of them in the snow. And our final reveal here is back at the Gotham Gazette as they've started doing the murder board, getting everything all connected. And Vicky's like, this is actually connected. Like, this is actually something big going on here. And he's like, oh, yeah, well, what do you bet we can draw a line from Arkham all the way to Somerset Theater? And in comes Patrick the intern with a gun, and he shoots Warren. And Vicky's freaking out, and he's just like, oh, sorry, Vicky, you weren't supposed to be here. But alas, here you are. And he fires another shot. So, oopsie, Patrick was in on it too. I like it. There's certain panels of the art. The whole Vicky Vale section of the book, I think the art really works well for. I think the Batman Riddler section, it doesn't. So it's hard for me to really say art-wise whether or not I like it or not, because it's very dependent on the section that's happening here. I think it's mainly, there's this, it's sketchy is the thing. And like, the sketchy didn't work in the big bright whites of this snowy mountaintop, but it does work in this office setting of like newspapers, and everything's very rough and just being thrown together. So beyond that, writing's fine. We're, setting up the next. Riddler knew something. We knew that before. We've known that for a couple issues now. And now we're getting the payoff on how much is he going to be able to tell Batman here. So I think this is moving forward nicely. I'm going to give it a flat 7, and we'll see what happens next week. Future's End number 35, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Jesus Marino and Stephen Thompson. So this issue picks up with Firestorm, aka Madison, whatever, going up against Dr. Polaris. She crawls out from underneath the giant-ass teddy bear that she transmuted, and Jason's like, yeah, you gotta, take into account mass and stuff like that. It's what we'll sort it out. We'll be fine. For right now, you got to get out of here. Fly. So at that, she tries to fly, but Polaris is already on her tail. Is pretty much unable to do something, and she's like, "Okay, what do you want me to do? Should I turn Polaris into a frog?" And he's like, "Okay, you can't affect organic matter. That's not really how that works." And she's like, fine, I'll do this. And she fires off an energy beam, but there are people down there and causes an explosion. Tim Drake hears this happening and it's just like, oh, an explosion, people might need help. So he goes running. We see Dr. Polaris made a shield out of some scrap metal nearby, so he survived the explosion. And he's just like, all right, you know what? Maybe I've been going too bombastic here. I think I might be able to do this in a much easier way. And he picks up a tiny little shard of metal, and Madison's just like, he's still standing. Like, oh, should we call him the Justice League? Like, what do we do now? And Jason's like, nope, we got to do this on our own. It's up to us. Like, he's just as new as us we are, so we got to take advantage of that. And Polaris takes this tiny little sheet of metal and just propels it at super high speeds, and she doesn't even see it coming, and it just goes straight through Firestorm's, shoulder. So at that point, Firestorm starts falling out of the sky. Tim Drake sees that and is just like, wait a minute, hold on. Ronnie Raymond's dead. How the hell is... All right, whatever. So he picks up a pipe and bashes Dr. Polaris in the back of the head, being like, it's pretty obvious you're on the wrong side of things here. So Polaris is just like, oh, you protect her, one of them, when they disdain you? And he goes to attack Tim, hits him with his own metal pipe, and that sets off Madison, saying, leave him be. So she blasts his suit, which turns out to just be the armor. There's nothing inside of it, obviously. So it's like, oh, that's weird. And he manages to grab Tim, and sets him down. He's unconscious. She kisses him, saying like, oh, I love you, and then flies off. And Jason's like, all right, well, that was weird. Please don't do that again. And she's like, shut up, man. So we then go to Las Vegas, where Lana is still having an emotional breakdown over 50 Sue. And 50 Sue comes in saying, like, you're not afraid of me anymore. And she's like, no, I'm not. I've reached my threshold of fear. That's just how it is. Are you going to kill me now? And she's like, maybe. I don't know. And she's like, God, what did they do to you? And she's like, what? Me? They didn't do anything to me. It's like, you're a child, and you act like you are a monster. And she's like, hey, don't call me a monster. And he's like, then stop acting like it. And they stare each other down for a second. And she's like, don't make me kill you. I'll kill you. No one else here is going to come and save you. I'll freeze everybody else in place. And Lana's just like, why not disintegrate me then, huh? Why to teach me a lesson? Why aren't you doing any of that? And she's basically like, oh, well, you're not my first mother and you won't be my last. And she's like, oh, yeah? And what if I decide I will be? And basically the scene just more or less plays out where 50 Sue's just like, why are you crying? And she's like, oh, well, do you care? And she's slowly like getting more and more annoyed by Lana, but also like trying to egg her on. And Lana's just not taking the bait. So he's like, oh, what, is this about your dead planet? Boo-hoo, my entire planet died. And she's like, oh, well, at least I had friends on that planet. And she's like, oh, friends are overrated, and so are mothers. She's like, how would you know? And she's like, I have friends. I got plenty of friends. You're just jealous because I can do whatever I want. You can't. You're stupid. You suck. And Lana smacks 50 Sue in the face. That's the best panel on this entire series. And Lana just tells her, like, go on, kill me then. Go ahead. But if you want me to be your mother, I'm going to be your goddamn mother. And I'm going to treat you like that. And 50 Sue's like, you don't get to do... No, shut up. I'm talking. Your mother is talking now. And you know what? On second thought, maybe you better be better off killing me because your reign of terror ends now. And 50 Sue kind of retreats. She's just like, you all run away. You always just run away. And she's like, well, if you're counting on that, you're going to be disappointed. I'm not going to raise a monster. You got that? So get out of that weird suit, the Deathstroke outfit. And she's like, but I'm Sequel. And it's like, no, you're not. You are Susan Lang, and I am your mother, and you are my daughter, and I make the rules. And from now on, you're not going to be killing people. And she's like, okay. And they hug. Well, Lana hugs her. And she's like, you can hug me back. And she's like, I'm working on it. So then we go to Earth's orbit, where I guess Shade is now, or sorry, Stormwatch's thing is, but is now also the mobile headquarters of Shade, as everyone's looking over Frankenstein, who's dying. And Amethyst is asking Ray Palmer, like, what's going on? What's up? And he's like, well, it probably has something to do with the magic that made Frankenstein interacting with the nth metal in Hawkman's blood, and it's acting like antibodies that's getting rid of the magic, and it's actually ending up killing him. And Amethyst is like, is there anything we could do? What about Father Time? You got him in a jar over there. And it's like, Father Time is not being helpful, and we are not going to be making deals with him, because we've got this whole thing set up, and they say, yeah, most of the people that were working for Shade were there under duress because of Father Time and like blackmail, so they're all getting to go free. The Creature Commandos are still part of it because they're cool, they're chill, they're helping out now. Black Adam went off into deep space. Engineer's still acting normal. Hawkman's still there. He's doing his thing. And we got to prepare for Brainiac. So there's a lot of stuff on our plate right now. And Amethyst is like, what do you mean prepare for Brainiac? How do we prepare for something like that? It's like, I don't know. But I'm now the leader of Stormwatch and Shade. So I guess I need to go build an army. And Amethyst just picks up Frankenstein and says, all right, well, if you're going to be busy doing other things and you don't know how to do magic, that's my area of expertise. I'm going to take him to a magic place. So she's going to save Frankenstein no matter what. And then we get the follow-up to the Joker-Batman hybrid, which, for the sake of this, until I have a better reason not to, I'm just going to say Joker or future Joker meets up with Plastique in modern day, and she's eating like a Nutter Butter, and Joker's like, ooh, can I have some? And he picks it up and goes to take a bite. Plastique uses her powers to turn it into a bomb, which she then explodes as Terry sees the explosion down the street. And she immediately comes running, being chased after by the giant Joker. Terry jumps in, passes by normal Batman as he's flying, and Terry's just like, great, that's just what I needed right now. So he goes down, tries to swoop in and saves Plastique. Joker fires off some shots from a machine gun, so he has to take evasive action. In comes some batarangs from normal Batman, hits Joker in the chest. As Terry goes and takes care of Plastique, manages to pick her up. Batman's like, I don't know what sort of monster you are. And then Joker's head flips around to the Batman side, catching current day Batman completely off guard, and he gets smacked in the face pretty hard. Terry and Plastique share a very passionate kiss as they're flying away. As Batman gets his ass handed to him, the Joker face takes back over, and Batman's like, go ahead, kill him, do it now. And Joker's like, what do you mean, kill him? That's crazy talk. If I did that, then we wouldn't be. And then we see Brother Eye's little text box saying locating target. So whatever that's going to be. I didn't really get much out of this issue. No individual part was that bad. I think it was all just very blatantly mediocre. The best it got was like the first 2 pages of the Plastique Joker stuff, because just him walking up and being like, is that a nutter butter? And then just eating it, like, I don't know. That was funny to me. I really liked that moment. But everything else was just kind of in this middle ground of, it's all right, I guess. I didn't need the Stormwatch like breakdown of here's where everybody is right now. Like, you just say where Black Adam is. Everything else like was completely superfluous to that. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one I'll just give it a flat 6. It's still not bad. It's not like a bad issue. It's just not good either. But it's more not bad than not good, if that makes sense. Earth 2 World's End, number 13, written by Bennett, Johnson, and Wilson, art by literally everybody who's ever worked at DC. So this issue opens up with the Parliament of Earth, all the different entities and parliaments and avatars and whatnot, and they're saying like, oh, the union of our avatars have failed. We didn't manage to get all of them there. The Reds never showed up, and Red's like, sorry, man, that's on me. I don't know where my guy is. And the Greens is like, it's cool. We still got a bunch of people there. Our world might still survive. So we see Helena showed up as the new Fury of Famine. And she's like, hey, everybody, check this out. And she literally dives through the avatar of the blue, just straight through the chest, seemingly killing it, and then grabs hold of, not Alan, whoever the name of the other one is, the one of the white, and is just like, I am the Fury of Famine, and I will be draining your soul. That's my famine thing. I take souls, and I will strip away all that you love in the memory of you in Darkseid's name. And Alan's just like, stop hurting him. I love him, regardless of what form he takes, and I always will, and you give him to me, or else I swear to God, I will destroy you. And Helena's just like, all right, you saved this one life, and in return, you've damned millions of others. So enjoy that. We then cut over to the tramway tunnels that are leading to the Project Beyond, the safe place for all of humanity. It currently had giant robots in it. Hawkgirl, Sergeant Steel, and Flash are all fighting against them, and they start up the high-speed train, which manages to collide right through the robots. Flash manages to pull Hawkgirl and Steel out of the way, like grabbing their arms, and Kendra even points out, like, you know, you pulled our arms at 300 miles an hour. Kinda hurts, man. So Jimmy Olsen, now ascending to godhood, as he just hovers in with a white aura, is just like, oh, these people will be led to where is safest, and if it comes to it, this will be where our last stand is. So then we go to Chicago, where Dick is just waiting for the tidal wave to hit. In comes, I always forget his name, Ted? Is that it? Wildcat. He comes in and he's like, hey, time to get out of here. And Dick's like, I'm just going to die. I'm better off dead. There's no escaping this. And Ted's like, look, someone out there, your son needs you. And he's like, does he? He's better off without. Look at that. I try to protect my wife. And Ted's like, oh, okay, you're doing a pity thing. Well, I don't feel bad about this. And he just knocks out Dick, grabs him, and starts outrunning the tidal wave down the streets of Chicago. So we then cut back to Desaad's place in the fire pits. We see he's launching a whole thing over at the group of Red Tornado, all the group there, and Desaad's like, oh, you're pitiful little group here. I took one of them away, and in turn, I will take each of you. And also, meet the one that I took here. Miss Yolanda Montez, a.k.a. the Avatar of the Red, has been turned into my great beast. And we see that Yolanda is indeed able to transform into all these different animal types, all red, and starts attacking Power Girl, and then manages to split her body into two separate entities so that she can attack the other ones as well. And she keeps on splitting over and over again. And Superman and Red Tornado are out. Batman's out. Power Girl's out. Dalzad's out. All of them gone. And Desaad's sitting there just being like, oh my, what Darkseid will do to you. So then we go back to Apocalypse, where Commander Khan is fighting against Terry Sloan because he rigged the ship to blow with explosives, and he pushes Sloan over to like the exit, and he's just like, I am not going to let you win again. And he opens up the airlock, dropping him down onto the planet. As the ship starts taking off, Mr. Terrific, Sandman, and all them see Sloan falling out, and they're just like, hey, wait a minute. That's Terry Sloan. And Mr. Miracle's like, yeah, he was making a deal with Darkseid. So they go to grab him, but he just flies away, and he just goes, not today, whoop, and he flies off. Meanwhile, Khan hops on the comms, and he's like, hey, the ship's wired to explode. I can't stop it, but I'm sure as hell gonna make use to it. And he starts flying over to Darkseid's tower castle thing. So then we go to the World Army escape camp, where Sato is, and she's like, we originally built this thing as like a space ark that was going to save 100,000 of the richest people on Earth. That didn't work out because of evil Superman. So now we've got millions of people here, and we got to find a way to keep them all safe. And her plan is, because this was not built to hold millions of people, she's taking Sergeant Pratt, the Atom, and she's saying, okay, or Atom Smasher, I think it is, she's putting him in a little capsule and dropping him down in a hole that is like a mile deep. And once he is down at the bottom of the hole, he will regrow to his maximum size, the size of 10 cities, creating a giant, massive cavern within the crust of the Earth for all these people to go down and be completely safe a mile deep underground. But the pressure will be too much, and he will end up dying. And as I say he will do that, we see visually he does do that. And rest in peace, Sergeant Pratt. You were a good soldier. So that's the issue. Yeah, not a whole lot standing out here. I think that the Helena, I could see the Helena stuff being the Fury lasting just like a bit too long, or it being like very Deus Ex Machina of like, and now I'm back to normal. Like, I'm hoping that storyline manages to wrap up well. I kind of want more focus on I know we just spent like 3 issues on the Apocalypse stuff, but it doesn't feel like that's actually wrapped up. And I kind of want to just spend a little extra time just finishing that so we can then move on. Like, I maybe we're going to have those people on that planet the entire time, but like, I kind of just want to wrap that one up. Everything else, in terms of everything else going on there, it's fine. It's okay. Just nothing's really jumping out at me as like, that's an interesting storyline. So I'm going to say that this one is flat 6. Sounds right to me. It doesn't sound like it really gets above that. It's just an okay story, and we will be continuing on. We're halfway done. 13. This only goes to issue 26. So 13 more weeks of this. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this December 31st, 2014. Again, with the caveat that it was actually last week's comics, but I just moved into this. You know what? I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. I made my choice. I can stand by it. Did I technically break all the rules of this program? Absolutely. And I'll do it again. So, what is coming up next week? Well, I'll tell you. But first, I just have to celebrate one little thing. Next week, it becomes 2015, 10 years ago. You know what I mean. That means I have less than a year and a half on this show left. I have under 18 months left of having to do this weekly show. And it's not that I don't want to spend time with you. Don't get me wrong. I love spending time with you. It's just that I would rather be doing literally anything else right now, because it is December 31st and I am reading 10-year-old comics. You have to understand that from my perspective there. Anyway, what is coming out next week? I will go ahead and tell you in alphabetical order. I have Action Comics, Aquaman and the Others, Batman Eternal, Detective Comics, Earth 2 World's End, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Justice League 3000, Lobo, Future's End, and Swamp Thing. So that is everything that's coming out the first week of 2015. And we only got a couple months left until Convergence. I'm so very sorry. I know. And for those of you who don't know, you'll know. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say on that right now. So if you have any thoughts on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, or you know what, let's throw in the extra this whole year, the past entire 52 episodes, go ahead and hit me up in the comments down below this YouTube video if you're watching that, or in one of the many social media places if you are listening to the audio version. We have a Discord, we have a subreddit, we have a Patreon. I will go ahead and say my resolution is to figure out if Blue Sky is worth it, and then I will tell you we have a Blue Sky. Just keep an eye out for that. I'm working on it, I promise you. But yeah, all that's available. Go ahead and hit us up there. Would love to hear from you. Beyond that, yeah, not a whole lot more to say. Have a very happy, festive holiday season if you're listening to this at the time it comes out. And if you're listening to it several months down the road, remember to file your taxes, because that's always going to sneak up on you if you don't take care of it soon enough. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening. However it is you consume this podcast, be sure to tune in next week. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.